Appeals hearing for September 14th, 2017. The first thing on the agenda is the reorganization of the board. Happens once a year. Do we have any nominations for the chairman?
I'd like change, so I nominate Rick Negrelli. Rich, I'm sorry.
Any other nominations? We have a nomination. Do we have a second?
I'll renominate you for chairmanship.
Thank you. On the nomination of Rich Negrelli, do we have a second?
Well, I second, sure.
The nomination.
Well, do we know if Rich is accepting it?
Well, I'm kind of surprised. Yeah, I'm a little surprised, but a little taken back, but okay. Okay.
Sorry with me. And then on the, how do we do that if there's two nominations?
Yeah, how do we do this?
Nance.
Lancey's going to do it.
Huh?
Rock, paper, shoes?
Well, I mean, I'll withdraw mine so we can vote on the initial one.
There you go. Works for me. So all in favor of Rich Negrelli, chairman, say aye.
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 It's passed.
Thank you.
We need a nomination for vice chairman.
I nominate yourself.
We have a nomination for Mr. Mullen. Do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There it is. All right, I'm vice chairman.
Yeah.
You have the,
Congratulations,
you have the.
well done.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys embarrassed me.
Who seconded it? Who seconded the nomination?
I believe we both did.
I think we both did.
Yeah, Rich did. All right. All right, so
All right.
we'll switch seats here.
Thank you, guys. Embarrassing.
Mr. Chairman, congratulations.
Mr. Vice Chairman.
All right.
Well, except for Rich. Rich is going to celebrate.
All right, so we have approval of June 8th, 2007, and July 13th, 2017, excuse me, August 10th, 2017. The minutes, we haven't approved them because everyone's been out, so. Can I get a second to approve
I make a second approve the minutes of June
8th,
8th,
2017?
2017.
And
I think we got to do them separately.
Do we have to do them
just 'cause
separate?
some people
Okay.
weren't here for everything.
All right.
Because I wasn't there once.
All right. Vote on it?
All in favor?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. July 13th, 2017.
Second the motion to approve the minutes, July 13th, 2017.
Vote. Accept.
Aye.
Aye.
August 10th, 2017.
I make a motion to accept the meeting notes, minutes of the August meeting, 10th.
I second the motion.
Okay, all? Aye.
Aye.
Present.
All right, so now we will continue on to the hearing, the first petition.
Abington Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing Thursday, July 13th, Town Hall, 500 Glenowitz Way, Abington, on the petition of Paul Sabine, 67 Woodland Drive, Weymouth, for a variance for a two-lot family dwelling under 17521A 1A, and variance for two principal buildings on one lot on 729 Randolph Street. Property located at Assessors Plan 57, Plot 107 in the R30 zone.
I think we might have a problem here. Don't we have to take out, because there's two different sets of motions here.
I believe we have to let the applicant,
Right. I think what happened,
Mr. Chair,
yeah.
Yes.
I'll say it.
been suggested by council that I discussed this proposal with council, and it's been suggested that the proposal
713.
that was the application of the 13th should be withdrawn without prejudice, and the proposal that you've made with the most current proposal is appropriately
Stand.
motioned to, so that the board could act on it. And that was what has been suggested by council, that how this should proceed, but I guess that's up to you.
So you would have to
and the board.
withdraw.
That's correct, and we will. The first petition that we had on the, by Mr. DeBenny for 729. Randolph Street.
Wait a minute, should we make a motion here to accept their withdrawal?
You withdraw
I'm
now?
withdrawing, yeah, withdrawing the original, we're withdrawing the original
Right.
proposal,
Yes.
petition.
So I make a motion that we accept the withdrawal of the,
Without prejudice.
without prejudice for the, let's see, that was June,
There was
July.
July 13th.
July
July
13th application.
Do we have a
I'll
second?
second it.
Okay.
Second.
Good. Okay,
Aye.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All in favor.
Just before we get started, I don't know if this throws sort of an additional wrinkle in it, but is this technically a continued hearing?
It is for, the last meeting that we had on this.
Just in terms of who would be the voting members? I mean, I'm happy because I wasn't here and I don't have any background to
Right.
allow somebody else to vote in my spot, but
That's a good question. Do we have the members here that voted on, was
Yes.
present?
Yes, I was for the last meeting.
So is this a new hearing?
And I had to
or-
write a letter
New hearing.
stating that.
Gonna be a total new hearing?
It's gotta be a new hearing. 'cause it's a
Because you
new-
just withdraw what you had on the last meeting, right?
It's a new petition, it's new everything. We had to put it in the newspaper, we had to re-notify abutters, we had to do, just like a brand new petition.
So the 100 days starts now? Or-
That's correct.
Okay.
So John and I are just the associate or alternate voters. So
okay.
we wouldn't have a vote here
So we have this
if
one.
it's a new one.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, good
Bye.
evening. My name is John Cotter. I work for the Russell Wheatley Company. I am here with Mr. Paul DeBenny Senior, and his son, Paul Junior, is also here with us, as well as Mr. Russell Wheatley is sitting to my left. He's going to handle any of the more difficult questions that may come up, so that I can sit back and relax. What we have, I guess I should start all over again. What we have is a piece of property on Randolph Street, located on the west side of the property. It's the same plan that you've seen. This is unchanged, but I just made some additional copies here for your review. Hope you don't mind sharing that one.
That's fine.
And what Mr. DeBenny would like to do is use the building that's highlighted there in red, which is right now, or was used as a commercial building, as a ceramic studio. He would like to build 2 one-bedroom apartments in that building. He purchased the property with the knowledge that there was a special permit granted on that building to construct 1 2-bedroom apartment in that building, and that was done in 2016, and the approval letter is recorded at the registry, so that he does have the ability to create one apartment. What he would like to do is see if it would be allowable to create 2 apartments, basically parking-wise and density-wise. It remains pretty much the same. He would be, however, requiring, as we've stated in our application, he'd be requiring a variance to convert the existing building into a 2-family with 1 unit on the first floor and 1 unit on the second floor. And because of that, he changes the use of the building into a 2-family. So what also he would have to require from the board would be a variance to have 2 principal buildings on a lot. Currently, the building is in the rear is not being used. It's empty. There has been no interest in utilizing it as a commercial space, where it was actually a commercial building prior to Mr. DeBenny purchasing it. The previous owner also tried to market it as commercial space. She couldn't get it, didn't find any interest, so herself, Mrs. Regan, had come to the board last year to request that she be allowed to put an apartment in there. And the board allowed her under a special permit to put a 2-bedroom apartment on the premises. What we're looking at here is instead of having 1 2-bedroom apartment, he would like to put 2 1-bedroom apartments in the same building and utilize it a little more, so that he would be able to utilize the property the way he was intending to utilize it. The hardship that we believe is in the fact that there is a building sitting there on the lot that right now can only be used as 1 2-bedroom apartment. It's a 2-floor building, somewhere in the area of 2,400 square feet thereabouts of building space. A 2-bedroom apartment is going to utilize very little of the current building, and he really doesn't get anything as far as utilizing what he has on the property. He can't utilize it to the fullest extent. The parking criteria we've met, as you can see on the plan. You're required 1.3 spaces for a 1-bedroom apartment. The total with the 2 apartments and the house would require a little over 5.5 spaces, 5.6. We're proposing to put in 7 spaces, as shown on the plan. The 1-bedroom apartments, as far as utilizing and what they attract, the 1-bedroom apartment more attracts a single professional, as we looked into it, more so than a 2-bedroom apartment could. There's a much bigger variety where you might get a small family in there, couples that would more increase the density of the site rather than the single 1-bedroom apartments. That was the theory behind going with the 1-bedroom apartments versus the 1 2-bedroom apartment. Typically on this street, there are other buildings that do have more than single families. This is an R30 zone. It's zoned for single families, but on this street, on this part of Randolph Street, there are other houses, other dwellings that are more than a 1-family dwelling. I do feel allowing the use of the building as a 2-family and restricting the size of the units to a 1-bedroom is a good use for the structure. I mean, you're going to utilize a good deal of it. It's, I don't believe that it would be overburdening the use. As I said before, that section of Randolph Street is a one-way street, so that, you know, right now, I think it would be, I think it would be an acceptable use. I don't think you're going to overburden the street, or any of the, the current utility, excuse me, the utilities that are in the area. And with that, I'll be willing to take any questions from the board or from anybody in the audience.
Do we have anything from the storage or anything? Nancy? No. I'll start it off. I mean, I drove by the other day and I noticed that there are a lot of cars parked the other way. In other words, you have the parking spots here, but they're like stacked on top of each other.
Well, there's nothing to direct anybody right now on the lot to tell them how to park. What they would end up doing is, if this got approved, he would have to stripe the parking area.
I mean, it looks really tight in there, I must say that. But that is enough parking spots, Marshall, for said?
1.3 per one bedroom, that's 2.6, and 3 for the single family is 5.6, rounding up 6 spaces. They've got 6 shown there.
Now, what about the proposed parking spot that's right next to the building? Is that any fire codes, or is that what we're going for a variance because you're putting a parking spot right there? Is it, I see it right here, the
Next to the
proposed parking space right next to the building?
That's an additional space
Yeah.
that's not needed.
It's not needed? It's not gonna be put in?
We are gonna put it in.
You are-
It's not needed, though. It's not necessary to conform to the parking criteria. It's just an additional
I mean,
space.
it's pretty close to where the lot line is,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
what I'm saying.
absolutely. There isn't any criteria for, in this, I don't believe in this instance, for a spot to be a certain distance from the property line.
Okay, all right. And of course, no parking on the road at all,
Absolutely.
especially during
absolutely,
the
that's
winter.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, the questions I have, jumping in here is, number one, what happened in the past? I don't understand how they approved it, but it was approved to have that building there in the beginning for ceramic in an R30. And again, an R30 is intended higher standards. To me, I think this is overcrowding of the property. It's already pretty dense as it is, and I think it could hurt the values of the neighborhood, the character. So in my opinion, I just think it's way too much for an R30, and that's not what our intent is in our bylaws, in my opinion.
When the special permit was granted last year, I vaguely remember the case, were there restrictions on the apartment being solely on the top floor?
First floor.
First floor.
Yes.
So that was the restriction at the time?
And it was a two-apartment.
It was a two-bedroom.
Two-bedroom apartment.
Right, yeah, okay. So now what you were looking to do is develop the upper level. So at that time, we were saying,
I wanted one.
right, but at the time, we were, I'm trying to remember, we were basically saying you can develop the bottom floor and use that for residential, but we weren't to go along with developing the top floor,
Exactly.
I think, at that time. Okay. You got anything, Andrew?
No, I don't have anything to add.
So I guess we open up to the floor? Sir, could you speak?
Philip DeRusha, 723 Randolph Street, I live right next door. I'm a small house in between. I haven't heard any specifics on an entrance and the access, the access to the back parking lot has not been determined. I don't think there should be any action taken. On that side of the house, the right-hand side of the house, looking at it from the street, there is an easement there that was recorded recorded back in 1997 from Linda Reagan. And you're right, there is no room for cars to be whizzing in and out. It's a safety hazard. And I heard you say, no parking on the streets. I've lived there roughly 23 years. Mrs. Reagan constantly had people parking on the street, on both sides of the street, when she was told one side of the street, but that's not fair. This residential zone, the density and the use really isn't allowed. And right now, what's being proposed does not exist in the bylaws. And this is not what the townspeople intended to happen when they voted for this. And like I said, when I spoke first, Paul knew what he was getting into when he looked at the property. It was no surprise. What's it gonna do for the neighborhood? It's gonna make it more congested. There's no room for those cars. And as a matter of fact, it should have only been an in-law voted in that. I wish the heck I came to that. This is beyond the wishes of the voters of Abington. We didn't vote for this, and I hope the board would strive to abide by the wishes of the townspeople. This is what we want. If I wanted to live next to an apartment complex, I'd be living in Dorchester, not Abington. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just to
Let's stand up, please.
the density issue. The way the permit is right now, I understand it needs 6 spaces. But what he's asking for still needs 6 spaces. So the traffic and density we're going
I'm sorry, who are you, sir?
on the sun.
Oh, okay.
But, say that again so I understand it. I
The
couldn't
way
hear
this-
it.
The special permit is right now.
Yeah.
Still needs 6 spaces.
Right,
What he's asking for is still needs 6 spaces.
right?
So the
The
special,
density isn't gonna
but
change.
the special permit is not valid anymore, correct?
No, it is. It's been
Yeah, it
recorded.
is.
It's been recorded according to
Does the special permit leave with new owners?
Mrs. Regan.
According to council,
Council could have said it goes the other way.
I would think it transited with the sale in this
Really?
case, yeah.
Really?
Um,
Is that sounds right?
Yeah.
Special permits?
But the hardship.
Special permit granted to the property owner or to the, was it granted to the property owner of the property? Understanding the 2 years to record decision is yet to lapse, because she seems to think maybe it hasn't been recorded yet, but there's still 2 years to record. Can still stand for a new property owner. There's no language in either the 2016 special permit decision or the zoning bylaw that renders the special permit specific or personal to the then applicant. In absence of a condition providing otherwise, general rule is that the special permit runs with the land. Compare Hope and Garden Board of Appeal, Lincoln, yada yada. So, I mean, there it is.
There it is.
I mean, ultimately, in my opinion, the threshold for granting a special permit is less than a variance. In this case, they're asking not for 1 variance, but 2 variances.
Mhm.
And they have to prove, for both 175-21A and 175-14. And I think ultimately, if we have to decide as a board if they've met those conditions, then we allow it, and then that goes in perpetuity because we've created variances. And if we don't, then it remains a single, basically a single apartment.
Special permit.
Yep. And they have to
A single
prove,
2-bedroom apartment.
Yes.
Yes.
and they have to prove hardship, and I don't see where they have proven the hardship. He bought the property knowing what it was, and now they're saying it is a hardship. That's,
Yeah, all right. Is there anyone else on the floor? Oh. All right, closer to the floor. Back to us, we can continue the conversation here.
I suppose the hardship is if you go out there and see the two buildings, their building that they're talking about putting into 2 apartments is this huge building. In fact, I don't know if this map is actually to scale, because it seems to me the other building, the building with ceramics, is bigger than the house right beside it, or at least it looks like that from the road.
Frontage.
And that was why we actually gave special permit for the apartment, because really it was going to be a risk. It was going to be an empty building that they weren't going to be able to use anything for. And, you know, at most, the suggestion was to use it as a garage. So, and I think the lady was not an in-law apartment, because the lady was very upfront in saying that she was going to sell the house.
Right.
So she was looking to put in an apartment. And because of the danger for the neighbourhood of having an empty building, we had, at that time, we allowed a 1-room, a 2-bedroom apartment in addition, even though it was North 30.
Now, you're
If I
saying,
remember, because I think I voted at that.
Because I didn't vote in this one, so.
Yeah, I think I voted at that meeting.
so you're saying it's not a hardship?
Well, the hardship runs with the building, because it was such a big building. At that time, we didn't have to think about hardship for special permits.
That's exactly right.
I understand, but that was the reason. And today, they're saying the same thing, really, that the hardship is the building itself.
Had that been the case, that the original one was a variance, I would have voted against it. I was a voting member. For
Right.
that reason, that there is not a hardship. The lady owned it, the house burnt down, the building burnt down, got a special permit to construct it in an R30, which surprised me, a ceramic in an R30, a business. And then that dies there. We were nice enough to allow it to go 1, and now we want more. That's my opinion. It's not a hardship.
Gentlemen?
No, and I mean, I think practically speaking, I can see that, you know, it may appear as though there's no distinction between a 2-bedroom apartment and 1 2-bedroom apartment and 2 1-bedroom apartments. However, I mean, I agree that, you know, because you want to utilize the building in a different way, that doesn't create a hardship. I mean, they were granted a special permit because it met those conditions at the time, but, I mean, whatever threat there may be to the safety of having an unoccupied building is alleviated by the fact that they can develop it at this point. So I'm not seeing the conditions for a variance.
We should make a motion.
Sure. I'll make a motion to where are we?
It's right here.
First, make a motion to deny the petition of Paul Devine, 670 Woodland Drive, Weymouth, Massachusetts, for a variance for a 2-family dwelling under 175-21A1A, and a variance for 2 principal buildings on 1 lot on 729 Randolph Street. The property is located on Assessors Plan 57, Plot 107, in the R30 zone.
Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. Being 7:30, move on to the next petition.
Still come to 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
It being after 7:15, Abington Zoning Board of Appeals will hold the petition of 714 Bedford Street Realty Trust, 714 Bedford Street LLC, 2 Tiffany Lane, Rockland, for a variance under 175-14 for more than 1 principal building on a lot, special permit under 175-21A4 for multi-unit dwellings, and a special permit under 175-35 to construct in the floodplain and wetland protection district at 714 Bedford Street. Property is located on Assessors Plan 46, Plot 6 in the Highway Commercial Zone. This is also a continued hearing, is it not?
Yes, it is.
So, the original members of, be the voting members? of the
That's
series?
correct.
Okay.
Rich, John, and Dennis.
Okay.
How you doing?
John, Dennis, and Rich.
Rich?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sean Riley, 500 Washington Street, representing the applicant, 714 Bedford Street Realty Trust. Mr. Jack Resendez is with me again tonight. Jack is the designer and working with the owner. Just to refresh and maybe to update the two gentlemen who weren't here, this is a proposal on Route 18, which is in the highway commercial zone. It's the old, used to be an old Lampworks building. It's actually a very large building on Route 18 next to Mr. Wheatley's office. And it has a little over 90,000 square feet, a smaller portion in the front and then a larger portion in the rear. The building, as you may know, being Abington residents, it's been vacant for a number of years now. It's just, the building itself is huge, and there's been really no activity there. For a number of years, there's been a paved parking lot in the rear of the lot that sits unused because basically Lampworks didn't generate that volume of customer traffic. I think at some point they put a parking lot in to maybe see if that would help with the marketability of this building, and it just never has come to fruition. So we have a big white elephant on Route 18. Mr. Gordon, right, the property owner, is a longtime developer, builder, contractor who has worked with Mr. Resendes for a long number of years. And they have made a proposal that has really come to a market conclusion that that building can't work. It's just not rentable. So the proposal, as we mentioned before, is to take that front building down, the commercial building, and replace it with a smaller commercial building. The building will conform with all setbacks. And out of the 90,000 and so odd square feet, over 2/3 of the property, as I mentioned, is out in the rear being unused. And the proposal is there'd be a special permit for the use for residential townhouse housing. The 10 units proposed, the plan has been submitted to you. So we're before you with a continued hearing for a special permit for the multifamily use in the highway commercial, special permit for the floodplain, the EIS has been submitted, and the variance to have more than one principal building on a lot, commercial in the front and the residences in the back. And we broke up the buildings in the back to give it a little more character, instead of having one large building in the rear. If I may, I'd like to submit some information in writing, just to kind of for the record and follow up with everyone based on some of the discussions we had. The concern seemed to be really the two buildings on a lot issue. More so than the others. And so I've kind of put in writing some of the discussions we had and some of the reasoning we had. And again, this property is over 2 acres on Route 18, but it is an odd-shaped lot. All the lots down this area are rectangular, square. They're cookie-cutter lots, except for this lot. Rectangular, having 198 feet of frontage and about 24,000 square feet in the front, and then the remaining 2/3 is out in the rear, behind other existing commercial mixed-use buildings. The value of this land initially is that front portion of the commercial use, because as you know, commercial uses like to be seen on Route 18. Out back, it makes no sense to put a commercial building out back because you can't see the building. The value, is to put residential uses out back, away from the roadway, surrounded by the wetlands and the existing trees. The rear portion has wetlands to the west, it has wetlands to the north, and it abuts residential uses to the south, namely the Adamses and Mr. Doughty, who are both here tonight again. As was noted in our previous hearing, this locus, this property, is the only odd shape. It's an odd-shaped property, the only one in this area of Route 18 in the highway commercial zone, which includes the bulk of its buildable area behind other buildings. There's no other lot like this. It's very unique to the shape of this building and the shape of this lot. The existing large building, as I mentioned, will need to be raised and replaced with a smaller commercial building, as the size right now just has shown it to be really unworkable. And a literal enforcement of the bylaw, meaning a denial of the variance, would create a serious substantial hardship that again, 2/3 of the property remains unused on Route 18. If the variance is denied, the only possible way, if you were to basically say, we'll only let you have one building on this entire lot, and if we were to try to maximize realistically the use of this property, we would have an odd shape, almost an S or Z-shaped building from the front, which would then have to go up the thin part and then spread out in the back. That alone would be an odd-shaped building, never mind the odd-shaped lot, and that would itself create other variance needs, because in addition to the setback violations, you also have driveway minimums of 24 to 30 feet in the commercial zone. There would be no substantial detriment to the good, and it does not derogate from the intent of the bylaw. Number one, because the attachment that's shown, which I'll mention in a minute, the uses that we're proposing here conform to other abutting and nearby uses. It is not something that is outside of this neighborhood. And no abutter has actually expressed a concern about the fact that we're proposing residential out back. I'll like to address some discussions we've had with specifically Mrs. Adams since our last meeting in just a minute. But on the second page of my handout, I've showed you a portion of the assessor's map and I labeled to you what is actually out there on Route 18 next to our property. And you can see we're essentially surrounded on the left and right sides of Route 18 with commercial office, mixed use, commercial office, mixed use, a commercial used car lot, a commercial used car and auto body shop, a commercial liquor store, a one-family, and an 18-unit apartment building directly across the street. So our proposal of a commercial building with multifamily housing actually conforms to what is immediately across the street, next to us, and around us. We have since, one of the concerns we talked about, Mrs. Adams, Leanne's behind me. Leanne's also our town clerk, I think you know. One of the questions was, she was concerned, she lives on Shore Avenue, and she wanted to make sure that what we were doing was not going to worsen her water problems at all. She has water that comes kind of off of Shore Avenue onto her property, and there's also a ditch or a stream that's about, actually it's adjacent to her house, comes on under Shore Avenue, goes alongside of her house and out behind our property. Myself, Leanne, Mr. John Cotter from Wheatley, and another gentleman, the broker, all walked the property with Leanne, and she showed us what her concerns were. Her front yard issue, or actually it's her rear yard grass issue, is actually abutting to Mr. Doughty's house. Mr. Doughty's over in the corner. That is not an issue that obviously we're creating. That's water coming kind of off of the street. But we had offered to her that should this be approved and we move forward, that our contractors could build a swale for her to actually collect any water coming off the street, and we would channel it down her side yard out to her rear portion so it doesn't go into her yard area where it tends to sit. Additionally, if the DPW is okay with it, at some point we need to go, no matter what we build out back, whether it be commercial or residential, it has to go to planning board site plan review, and it has to go to conservation. We're going to propose that if the DPW doesn't have the manpower, Mrs. Adams reported to us that a little over 10 years ago, the town went out there and cleaned out the ditch, the stream there, as they, basically it's their responsibility, but they hardly ever have the manpower, that we would do that on behalf and under the supervision of the DPW, and obviously with the Conservation Commission's permission. Basically, there's a lot of dead wood in that area, some trees have fallen down, and it tends to kind of clog it up when there's more water. We looked at it, the ditch itself is fairly straight, fairly wide, there was very little water in it, and when we were there, but obviously in heavy rains, we want to make sure it continues to flow past her property, and frankly, past our property. As we also mentioned last time, and Mr. Cotter and Mr. Wheatley's office have submitted plans to you to show that the direction of the water from our property is not changing. It does not actually go towards Mrs. Adams or Mr. Doughty's property. It goes northbound, and it will continue to go northbound, and it goes into the wetlands northbound. We're actually going to put in a drainage system where none exists. Well, there is a drainage system out there. We're going to update it and improve it. So everything that hits our pavement, again, there already is pavement, and there is catch basins out there, we will continue to let it flow to the north, which goes into the wetlands area. So there'll be no negative effect to any of our neighbors as far as the water goes. And I won't speak for Mrs. Adams, but I think we came to a pretty good consensus that cleaning up the area out in that ditch would help everybody, and we're more than happy to do that. Again, the denial of allowing us to have more than one building of a lot basically allows us not to use the rear part, the majority of our property that is already paved and is a buildable area. I don't think it's unreasonable to have residential housing set back off of the street. If anything, it's desirable. And we hope by having a brand-new commercial building out there, that it will be an attractive building, and we'll get some business to come into that property. It has its own separate, plenty of room for its own separate parking lot, which again is shown on the plans. Mr. Resendez has brought some plans and some sketches if you want to look at it, but we're more than willing to answer any questions. I hate the fact that I had to repeat myself on some things, but I know I wanted to make sure the other gentlemen were aware. Right. But I'll be quiet and let you ask questions.
I'd just like to start off with, you're saying you're going to have a drainage system that goes into the wetlands. Is that the code, that you can drain rainwater into wetlands?
Yeah, in fact, if you prevent it, basically, if you take a piece of land, whatever it is, vacant land, and you were to develop it, you need to control the water that comes on your land and basically tend to let it go where it normally was going. If we were to take the water, let's say, that fell on our property and reroute it and put it in a pipe on Bedford Street, we'd effectively be drying up the wetlands, which actually that violates the wetlands laws. So we're not allowed to dry it up, we're not allowed to send in any more, and we have to control any volume. We're doing what is already there now, we're actually just improving it. We're putting in a retention pond, which actually cleans the water better than what happens now when it just kind of flows off the pavement.
Well, I just see that there's a commercial car use, there's mixed use, there's another commercial, where this water is, I seem to recall one of the residents telling me that they get water backed up, and it all started when they put the parking lot back there.
Down the street, yeah, Damon's, I think. Mrs. Adams, and again, one of our comments for us was that she used to have more water problems until the town went out and cleared that ditch, which was about 10 years ago, so.
I don't know about that.
All right, oh, John had done, I'm sorry, John was the one who reported.
Okay. The way I look at this, though, when I look at this, and it's my own opinion, that I really think you're putting a lot of buildings in one small area that has potential of flooding. I mean, we just had the major storms that came in from the hurricanes, and if we ever had something like that, I mean, we're talking about you're building condos 33 feet from the creek bed, correct? If I'm looking at this plan correctly? I mean, that's a lot of houses, buildings, foundations put in one area. Well, you're surrounded by wetlands and other buildings and houses, and the road, too. So if what you are building for drainage does not work properly, or it drains into the wetlands more down below, you're actually, these commercial car areas and stuff like that, when you rip up what you have here now, the trees and everything back there, and the parking lot, and put your drainage system in, how can you guarantee that you're not going to overflood the wetlands downstream?
Certainly, it's a good answer, because you throw out a lot of hypotheticals there. When whatever gets built out here, if we had one commercial building, or 4 condominium units, whatever it is, has to go to site plan review, which, as you know, then has to be reviewed by the town's consulting engineer. So our engineers, which is the Wheatley Company, has to design a stormwater management system that conforms to current management standards, drainage standards, to prove that you're not going to hurt the wetlands, flood the wetlands. You're not going to also make any situation with a neighbor worse. It may, in fact, improve it. That has to be demonstrated and stamped by a registered professional engineer. The town's registered professional engineer then checks that work, and if they don't approve it, the planning board cannot approve this plan. So there's no doubt in my mind that we will do this. It'll improve the drainage, because right now there's just one, and you can see in here where we're putting in a retention pond. As I mentioned, a retention pond does 2 things. Retention pond collects water from a catch basin in from any sort of sheet flow, and it collects it, retains the water so it doesn't flow quickly into a wetland or into any abutting property. The other thing it does is it lets sediments settle, so it actually cleans the water. So the water that eventually does flow out is cleaner than it would have been had we not upgraded the system. So your concern about ruining or flooding or damaging wetlands, we're going to actually protect them more than they are protected now, or we cannot get this approved.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, can I ask then, following on what Rich asked, why are you asking for a special permit to construct in the floodplain? Why do you think you need a special permit to construct in the floodplain?
Because half the town of Abington is in the floodplain and wetlands overlay district.
Well, we're not talking about half the town of Abington, though. We're talking about this location. So what's the danger? Why do you need a special permit?
Because the zoning bylaw requires that. So what the purpose of the floodplain, the special permit for the floodplain and wetlands protection overlay district
Right.
means that there's a 1970-something map that was created that we all go by, that shows different areas of town that are believed to be either areas with known wetlands or areas with poorly draining soil or any sort of issue. It could be a topography issue. So the purpose of that was to require a special permit to be had, unless it was a 1 or 2 family house, a special permit that requires a public hearing. So neighbors could come.
Why?
I'm getting that. So neighbors could come, and we could demonstrate that what we were going to do to alter our land, whether we're putting in a swimming pool or a condo or a commercial building, would not exacerbate any existing flooding issues.
Would not flood anybody.
No,
Would
would
that
not
be right?
exacerbate any flooding issues.
Would not
Mr.
make the
Dowdy's
flooding
land,
worse.
let's just say hypothetically, floods every time it rains. What we do could not make that worse.
Okay.
And if we can demonstrate that to you, then the special permit is warranted. If we can't demonstrate that to you, if we were to say, we're gonna reroute the water and turn it around and send it back towards the residential houses, you guys should deny that outright. And the planning board would also deny that outright. But what these plans show to you, and what the planning board and the conservation commission will look at the exact same thing, is where is the water going? Is it going where it goes now? Is it controlled? Is it better than it was before? It cannot be worse. You cannot increase the volume or the rate of flow. And that's what these plans will show, and we'll get into even more detail with the engineering level.
Okay, all right. Although I will point out that it was before us, the zoning board, and not the planning or the conservation. And I don't mean to be smart about that, but when I used to be on the conservation and we get these plans, and we think, how can the zoning board agree to have done construction in this area? And unlike the zoning board, the planning, I don't know about planning, but certainly the conservation cannot stop anybody from constructing. They can certainly advise. I would be interested in hearing, but you have answered that about flooding, because there's obviously an issue with flooding, or exasperation of flooding, and you're going to handle it by doing a swale down the side of your property, right? You're
No.
going to
Oh, I'm sorry. Which, the swale that I mentioned earlier,
The
the one you're
swale.
looking at the plan?
No, the swale. You just said you were going to do. You chatted to the neighbours. And you're going to build a swale along the property.
That's actually off our property. It's not something we're required to do. We met with Leanne and walked her property, and she had an issue with her side lawn, her rear lawn behind her house. Water coming off Shore Avenue, not from our property, but off of Shore Avenue, was tending to pool in part of her grass yard next to her pool. We said, if this project moves forward, we're going to have machinery available. We'll send our guys over there and fix this for you.
Oh, you're putting a swale on her property.
Yes.
Oh, I see. And then you're doing a ditch where you're cleaning out the stream that's at the back of the land of the property.
If the town, it's the town's responsibility to clean it, the DPW. Unfortunately, they don't have a lot of manpower to do that. As you know, under the Wetlands Protection Act, the town can do that to clean ditches, and especially for mosquito control. So if the town would, if John Stone would like to allow us to do that under his supervision, again, we'll have the machinery. Really what we need is a couple of chainsaws and guys in boots to walk down the ditch and cut up the dead trees, and we'll remove
And
that.
you're doing a retention pond.
Yep.
So where's the retention pond going to
If
be?
you look on the plan,
Yep.
if I can.
It's going to be there.
Again, the water flows to the north, which is, if you're looking on the plan, it's on the right side of the plan. This is how the property is. This is Route 18, looking north. When it rains out, the water flows to the north, into the wetlands area. That's why it's wet, because the water's flowing there. This plan allows that to continue, but cleans it and controls it better than it is now. There should be absolutely no negative effect to the properties to the south, because we're doing nothing and constructing nothing that's blocking water coming from the south or making it turn back to the south. We are working in an area that is already cleared and paved. In fact, we're taking up some of the pavement that's closest to our abutters and pulling it back so we can put in some more trees along the property line.
The detention pond is beside the wetlands. Would that be right?
Yep, which is typically what you'd want to do, because you try to have a connection. So that detention basin holds the water, and again, it gets to a certain level until it gets to the outlet and the water flows there. And as I mentioned before, what they call the solids, the floating solids, whatever they're called, settles into the detention pond and doesn't continue into the wetland. So if we had, like right now, if you stand in that parking lot, it just kind of flows off the parking lot. Now, it'll be controlled and caught.
And thank you for letting us continue the hearing, because I did go out and have a look, and there's this huge cement pad behind the building, and it is a huge building, so if you did construct, you'd probably have to take it down. What was the pad? What was that huge pad?
Behind the existing building?
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. It's been there.
According to this, it said, earlier, it said parking.
You talk about the existing parking lot that's there now?
Yes.
Yeah, that was done like 10 years ago.
No, I think he's, are you
The
asking about
pad
a
right
concrete
behind there,
pad
the
of some
huge,
sort?
yeah, the huge pad where you're going to construct your houses.
Oh, the paved parking lot, I'm sorry, you're talking about.
Oh,
Yes.
that's a parking lot. That was a
That's-
parking lot.
Again, that's been there, that previous owners had put that in, and that's where we're putting our property, on area that has already been cleared.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, when we go to the public, I'd just be interested in hearing from the abutters and if they were happy with the idea of the swale and detention.
Yeah, but I think we'll just continue on the board here. John, do you have something to say?
Yeah, number one, on number one, and our zoning laws, 175-2, it says, our bylaws are to promote the health, safety, morals, convenience, and general welfare of the inhabitants of Abington, to lessen the danger from fire and congestion, from the hazards of flood, water, inundation, to conserve health, to secure safety from fire, panic, and other damages, to provide adequate light, air, to protect and conserve the value of property. And to add to that, I know because they're apartments, the houses' values will be lessened.
I'm sorry, what houses?
The butters.
Do you have anything to support that statement?
If you want me to, I can guarantee, okay, I'll tell you one that it absolutely happened to me is when I personally went to the state, I don't know if I should have to do this, but when I was going as far as an ethics question, when they were building on Glenwood's Way, where they wanted to propose the apartments, I called the state ethics, telling them I was on the board, and can I do it? Because I said, one time they're condos, one time they're apartment, and they said, if they're apartments, you cannot vote for them because you live in a condo, they will lower your values. And that's Amy Nee from the state ethics. So that's where
That's an ethics question about, you can't
Property
do anything
values.
that could
Is she
lower or
lying to me?
raise your values.
She lying to me?
No, I'm not saying she
Okay.
lied to you, John. I did not say that. I'm saying you just made a statement that is not substantiated. And I think, I just want to, I
It
have to
will-
represent the interests of my client, that's all.
You will find it in ours. I don't have it right in front of me. Give me.
Well, if I could say, in everything you just read, this is what this plan does. This plan does promote everything you said. It does lessen the danger from fire and congestion. It does because we're building a brand-new building with all of the current fire safety codes. There's a big, huge, empty wooden building there now that is a fire hazard, it's a fire trap. To lessen the dangers from hazards of floodwater, inundation, that's what we're putting in. Stormwater management under current DEP standards, that doesn't exist there now. There is nothing before you that should lead you in any way to believe that we are creating a flooding concern. In fact, the exact opposite is before you.
Okay, I wasn't quite finished. To prevent overcrowding of land, to avoid undue concentration of population, to preserve and increase the amenities of the town, to control natural conditions, to facilitate the adequate provisions of transportation, water, sewage, schools, parks, and other requirements, and to improve the beauty and beautify the town by encouraging the most appropriate uses of land within the town under the provisions of Chapter 48 of the general laws. That's one comment I had on this property. Also, it's a conforming lot right now. This would then become a non-conforming lot, correct?
No?
To do this, this one structure on this lot now is conforming, I guess. To put more than one structure on the lot would make it non-conforming, and then you would need relief to do what is being asked, I believe, yes.
So that's another question I have there. Why would we want to do that? And the fact that they are apartments. Okay, that's it.
Or condos. Who said, there might be apartments, there might be condos, but that's really irrelevant to the construction of the property or the drainage. That doesn't change a thing as far as the construction or the drainage.
Okay,
That part of, no, you're right. That part of it doesn't, but it does as far as values of the safety of the neighbors and the integrity of the neighbors and that, yes.
Hey, could we move on?
Yeah.
You guys?
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I'd like to see some, do you have any renderings of what the building's gonna look like? Because this is always one of those things that particularly bothers us and, or catches us off guard later.
Right. Now, these won't be visible from the street because they're set back behind all the other commercial buildings, but nevertheless, people live here, so we want it to look nice.
So basically, the plan you have now, that's the engineer's for the survey plan. This is actually kind of like the general site plan of what the buildings will look like, by the shape of the buildings. So these are kind of like some 3D sketches that are, not fully developed, but this is a general feel of what we're trying to create. The townhouses in the back that have a residential kind of homey feel, and the building up front, whatever commercial building it's going to be, we have the same kind of materials to match, to kind of make it so it feels like the same property, but it's still commercial.
And do you have an idea in terms of how many bedrooms each unit's gonna have, or is it gonna be varied, or two each?
Each unit's 2 bedroom, 2 bath.
Okay.
And we do have floor plans for that.
So these are basically, at the peak, you're looking at, height-wise, what, 25, 30 feet?
Yeah, 26 feet to the top of the feet, to the roof, yes.
So that's, I suppose, I get trying to maximize return on investment. You're sitting here at over a 2-acre lot, and then you end up, your proposal has Unit 1 26 feet from someone's property line. So you're going to rip all that out, you're going to put in little lollipop 8-foot-high trees or something like that, and 20 years from now, the abutters, which in this case happens to be the Adams, will finally get some privacy back.
Well, I'm sorry.
One second. And then regarding the parking lot on the, I guess it's the south side, now you're looking at a half dozen spaces that are as close as, well, less than 20 feet from Mr. Doughty's, and now you've got up to, 12, 15 headlights pointing into his backyard. And as someone who's had that sort of property put in relative thing, luckily that particular builder was amenable and we got the light pollution screen down. But just, I see you're proposing 10 units. Had you gone with 9 units, now you're 50 feet from a property line. I mean, you got 2 acres, 2+ acres. It's always the thing. Let's how much more can we jam in? It's your money, it's your thing. But to me, are you being a good neighbor?
Well, okay, Mr. Mullin, let me try to address that, because those are legitimate questions, but I think we have answers for every one of them. You asked about the setback. The setback conforms with the zoning district. Okay, we are not asking for any variances for this property, other than the fact we need the variance for having more than one building, because the lot is oddly shaped, undoubtedly, and we have the building up front, and we have buildings in the rear. The issue about the headlights and the parking near Mr. Doughty's, that's already pre-existing. That exists now, and it's going to continue to exist. And as far as being only 26 feet away from Mrs. Adams, their lot is 285 feet deep. Okay, so their house is about 40 feet off the road, and then there's a long area of woods back there before. We physically walked out there with her and showed her where the building would be. It is quite a distance away from her house, and there is a large swath of woods that are on her property, so we can't cut it down. It's there to protect that, and it's, she needs conservation to cut it down, frankly. I don't think at all we're overloading this lot, because we conform with everything. We conform with the number of units, we conform with the number of parking, we can conform with all of the setbacks. We have more green space out there, we're breaking up the parking lot, and we're putting in better drainage. And, as was mentioned, 175.2 talks about protecting and conserving the value of the property. It's also the value of his property and the neighbors. We are doing everything we can. We're required to put up buffers, much as you said. We're going to be adding, we have to add fencing and buffers along the sides where we abut any residential property. So that will obviously be added, has to be added as part of site plan review.
Well, my understanding is if this back area is residential, you're not obliged to put.
No, we
You
are.
would have to do it in the commercial area, but I don't believe residential to residential, you're not obliged to fence.
No, a commercial building or a multifamily residential that abuts a residential use must put up a buffer. And so we would be required, we don't have to do it technically next to Mr. Wheatley's, because that's another commercial building. We might do that just for aesthetics, but out back, we either have to maintain a 20-foot wide vegetative buffer, or we put up a 6-foot tall fence with suitable plantings. All of that will be addressed. This conforms, gentlemen. If we were to take down the front building, we have every right in the world to go build the same building out back where we're proposing these residential uses. It's allowed as of right to do that. We could have that same size or even a bigger building out back, a commercial building, if we wanted to. And I would trust, I don't know if you had the same comments, even though it'd be a bigger building with parking out there and drainage issues and the same thing. We're proposing something that is less of an impediment or to a neighbor, where it's townhouse residential uses. It's a good use, it's a better use, it's set back off the road.
Okay, Andrew? What is it? Okay, what we're gonna do is open to the floor. Who's first?
Thank you, Chris Howell from 53 Shaw Ave. I'd just like to correct one thing. That building was occupied in 2017. It's been occupied for 17 years by the same tenant, flourishing business, and there is no white elephant. There is no white elephant there. That had two businesses in it, a hairdresser and a furniture store. And the business did quite well. When it opened up, the parking lot was filled with cars. It's not a white elephant, so to give it a variance based upon it's a white elephant, to me, is not even close to the reason to give it a variance. So I'm against it. I know Carl was for it. He's a realtor in town. He's probably hoping to get the listings. But I'm against it for that.
Okay. Anybody else? Floor? Leanne, anybody? Anybody? Okay, all right. Okay. Is that it? Okay, close it to the floor. Bring it back to the board. Gentlemen?
I just want, in my opinion, the building exists now, he's been using it all along, and to me now he's saying it's a hardship. I don't think there is a hardship. He wants both front and back now, maximizing to me, overusing the lot, and I think it's not in the hardship hasn't been proven as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Well, it's, so I think, I'm not sure, I was listening. The hardship seems to be, just like Mr. Dowdy said, that, you know, that the hardship was the White Elephant building. It's this building that you can't really rent out. And you've got this huge... No, I know you're saying that there is no hardship, that it isn't a White Elephant building, but it seems they were saying that it is, you know, a
Right,
big building,
yeah,
that they
I
can't
gotcha.
commercially
Yeah.
sell it. And I did go and see, and there is this huge platform, you know, outside, where there was parking, presumably parking for the building. That would actually gel with it, wouldn't it? It was a huge building, and so I suppose it had a big parking space in the back that would link with it. It's a lot of house for the area.
Yes, I agree.
So
Yes.
that is perhaps, you know, that didn't get as much attention, I think, in the public discussion, except you brought it out.
Yeah.
And that is perhaps the biggest issue, is that there's a lot of
Right.
house for this area. You know, and smaller is always better, I think, in this. I think that the attempts they made on the stormwater seem very valiant. It would be interesting, you know, Ms. Leanne didn't talk about how the idea of the swales and all, but it strikes me that things like swales are out of their control, but they do have a detention pond, which would take up a lot of the groundwater.
Well, and also I think, I mean, they have to go onto someone's property to make everything work for them. Why are we giving them a variance to build something that they have to go onto someone else's property and has to go in there and clean out the storm drain? Why are we giving them permission to build back there when they need to go on a neighbor's property and build swales?
I
mean,
don't think that's, I think they were just offering that as a,
I understand that, but
As an
they're offering it
assistance.
if there is a problem, so you're leaving it out there that there possibly could be a problem somewhere down the line. It's a lot of buildings in one small area.
I think, just remind what we're looking at as a board today. The hardest obstacle is the variance. I mean,
Right.
they're asking for two things, a variance and a special permit. The variance is 175-14, which is to allow more than one principal building.
Right.
All right, so then obviously because it's a variance, they have to solve for a hardship, or approve a hardship, and in that case, is it, you know, is it shape, topography, or soil conditions? Given the shape of the of the lot, you could argue that 2+ acres in an odd shape alone creates the hardship. So if you accept that, then you go on to the second, which is the use more detrimental to the area. And then if you accept that, then you grant the relief. And I think 175-14 is the first thing we have to address rather than 175-21A.
But we'd have to address them all.
Right,
I mean.
but I think just in terms of a hierarchy, you couldn't grant a special permit and then deny the variance.
Right, exactly, correct.
But going back to your variance, it isn't conforming one now, so the second one now,
What is not conforming?
I mean, it is conforming right now, the building, the way it is.
By changing it, it becomes
By changing it, it
non-conforming.
becomes
Well,
non-conforming.
that's because there's one building.
Yeah, but now you're allowing a hardship to be created. He doesn't, in my opinion, have a hardship at this point. And that's where I differ on that, because the hardship would be financial or otherwise.
I
The hardship
understand, I'm
would be
just saying, and I'm not a voting member on this
Right.
one as it's a continued hearing.
Yes,
I'm just looking at it from,
the variance side.
right.
Right.
If
So this,
someone has 2+ acres and there's one building and, for whatever reason, there's not a lot of commercial development now. I mean, that's neither here nor there. But anyone who owns 2 acres is probably gonna wanna do
Much as
a
I can.
little bit more. Yeah, everyone wants to do as much as they can on it.
Okay,
So we're
We're
less
gonna
about
handle
the
it on that.
flooding, because that's more of
Right.
site planning and conservation. We have to look at really just 175-14, and then if that's a go, then it's 175-21A.
okay, so does
Perhaps,
anyone?
very, very, very quickly, Mr. Chairman, perhaps it would be useful to talk about the 4-pronged tests that were taught for a variance. And the first one is that an applicant cannot realise a reasonable return, provided that lack of return is substantial, as demonstrated by competent financial evidence. In other words, that they can't make enough money on the property. And that was an issue maybe with the first hearing, and I think that might be an issue here. I think financial evidence might be an issue here. They're saying that obviously they're going to make more money if they do the condos. Secondly, the alleged hardship is unique to that property and not applies to the district. Well, I suppose it is in the shape that I talked about. Number 3 is that the requested variance will not alter the essential character of the neighbourhood. So what are we in the zone here? We're not
Highway
in
commercial.
highway commercial.
So
Where are you reading from
So
then?
it would change. I'm actually reading from some notes that the building inspector gave me. So I would tell you this isn't my thing, but I mean I think some of it links. Do you have a problem with any of that?
Yeah, it's not the statutory language.
It's not staff. Okay, you know what? That's fine. Scratch that then.
You were close, it's just,
I thought I was arguing for you actually, but
well, you
that's
were,
okay.
but I just want to,
Yeah.
the board has to base it on statutory. And
Yeah.
if I could ask, if the board is, when they take your vote, procedure, I'd just like to ask you to take 3 separate votes on the 3 things that we've asked for.
Well, we're going to do
3
that.
separate votes.
Yes, please, because I think
Well, we do that
you need
anyway.
to substantiate your denial or your
did we
approval.
shut this off? or-
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
that's.
Sorry. Well, he was right to actually.
Oh, he was just
contradict me.
responding to his,
Yeah, that's good.
yeah, right.
But so, you know what, I was going to say that I think part of hardship in the statute is financial hardship to the owner. So, I mean, and that's always what's before us.
Yeah, I think we really beat this to death here, so,
Yeah.
would anybody like to make a motion?
I personally, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion that we deny the
Well, you're gonna do
petition
one-
of 714 Bedford Street, Realty Trust, SO 714 Bedford Street LLC, 2 Tiffany Rockland, for a variance under 175-14 for more than one principal building on a lot. A special.
So we've got to stop there for a minute, I think. We have to do the variance first and then go on to the special permits, correct?
Right. But if he reads that all off, and then we do each one of them, the variance.
Okay, so here, read it all, and then we'll go.
Yeah.
A special permit 175-21A4 for multi-unit dwellings, 4 multi-dwelling units. Dwellings, I mean, a special permit under 175-35 to construct in the floodlands and wetlands protection district at 714 Bedford Street. The property is located on Assessor's Plan 46, Plot 6 on the highway commercial.
Okay, so, on the variance, what was that? Let's see. Did you read that one?
175-14.
Yep.
Do we have a second?
Do we have a second on that one?
What was the motion? I'm
It
sorry.
was the motion to
The
deny.
motion was to
the-
deny.
To
To
deny.
deny.
Okay,
You second it?
yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we gotta go on to the special permit. Bob?
Do we have a second on the motion of the special permit under 175-21A?
Aye. Sorry, I.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
And do we have a second under the motion for the special permit under 175-35?
Just to clarify, these are to deny?
This is to deny, correct. Yep, this is to deny. Because he started off with
Yep,
denying.
yep, okay.
But, okay, you don't have to deny all of them. You can approve and deny. The board has to substantiate whatever they're doing.
Okay. Go on.
Well, I second the motion.
Okay,
to
all in
deny.
favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Okay,
guys. I know I put you through a lot. I appreciate your time.
okay.
Thank you.
I guess I'm going to be writing for you. Yes. It was 175-21A-4 was denied, is that right?
Yes.
All three.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Okay,
It being after 7:10 PM, just a little, the Abington Board of Appeals will hear the petition of Jennifer Lopez, 44 Pearl Street, Quincy, for a special permit under 175-21A8 to convert attic space to a third unit at 65 Whale Street, property being located on Assessors Plan 53, Plot 206 in the R20 zone. Hi there.
how you doing?
Jessica Lopez, 44 Pearl Street. My husband, Luis Morales, we just want to convert our two-family in 65 Wall Street, the attic into a two-bedroom unit. It's currently a full-size attic, so we just wanted to convert that into a two-bedroom, one-bath apartment.
Okay, just to read into the record, this is just this one. This is just this one.
Yeah, that's all I got.
All right, the Polish Club in North Abington, please accept this letter as support for the application for a special permit by Jennifer. I'm sorry, it says Jennifer.
No,
I'm sorry, Lopez, to convert her attic space into a third unit at 65 Whale Street.
Nancy, was there, I thought in the email you had mentioned there was some for and against letters, am I wrong?
Yeah, I gave you
This,
a copy.
this was a
Yeah.
four.
The only one?
Oh, no, that was for,
Okay.
there was one
Okay.
for another petition.
Okay. Now, I remember you coming in front of us,
yes, last.
and you were supposed to come back the following meeting,
Yes, unfortunately, we weren't able to make it.
and you didn't notify anybody, so we could have continued it.
Well, I did call. I'm not sure who I spoke to, but I called that same day and they said that unfortunately I had to wait 2 years, so.
Oh, so, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And the questions that I remember back then, the biggest issue we had there, because that area is kind of grown, housing-wise, is it was not very nice outside. There was used abandoned car and stuff of that nature. I drove by it the other day, and it looks much better. And the only thing that I noticed also, that front stair looks very dangerous. It's cement and it's falling apart, so I would,
Okay, we'll get that.
based on whatever we do here, I would strongly recommend you fix it, or you might have some insurance problems.
Okay.
What do you have for parking at that location, ma'am?
Well, right now we have, the side, parking lot.
Oh, okay.
They have more than adequate.
Yeah, we have a lot of space.
Probably get about 15 cars on there.
Yeah, I remember driving by it, I just don't remember the parking space. I think I was looking at, like, the structure and less the thing, but now that I see this, I realize, yeah, you did have plenty. Okay, I don't have any questions regarding this.
Anybody else?
Just so you know, we were ready to approve it last time.
Okay.
Maybe.
happened to miss the
good.
date.
Hey,
I said last time.
okay, I'm gonna close the board then. Anybody in the audience? No? Okay, I'll close it to the audience. Bring it back to the board. All right, it'll be the three of us, correct?
Yeah, looks pretty
My
straightforward.
only question would be, so, under to approve the special permit, you need to be complying with 175-28.
That
Minimum
states that
steps.
the one unit will be 600 feet minimum, and the others will be a minimum of 400.
400.
Okay, and there's no issue with that?
Well, if there is, I'm not going to issue the
Okay.
permit.
Okay.
I'll
That
have
comes-
to verify that. I'll have to verify the parking as well, that they meet all those requirements.
And no storage bathrooms being built or anything like that?
Yeah, bathroom,
Yeah, there'll be
kitchen.
There is?
bathrooms.
Okay, there's nothing from the storage this week?
Stoney will be
There's
having
capacity
to sign
Okay.
off on the permit, so
Yeah.
he'll be notified as well.
All right.
If he's not good with it, it won't happen on.
And we'll have to construct a second egress?
The egresses will all have to
Okay.
meet
Yeah.
the bedrooms,
Yeah, that was
smoke
on.
detectors,
Okay.
egress windows.
Yeah,
We
we're
go
aware
through
of
the
that.
whole thing.
Okay.
It's
Excellent.
all got to comply, or I'm not going to issue a permit for them to build.
All right, very good.
In
And
that
just
case-
keep it clean.
Sounds good.
Anybody want to make a motion?
Sure, in that case, I'll make a motion to approve the petition of Jennifer Lopez.
Jessica.
Jessica?
Is it?
It really
It
is.
is. It is. I don't know why it's,
All right.
Our admin was
Jessica
starstruck.
Lopez, 44 Pearl Street, Quincy, for a special permit under 175-21A8 to convert attic space to a third unit at 65 Whale Street. The property is located on Assessor's Plan 53, Plot 206 in the R20 zone.
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
See Nancy, she has a letter for you. There's a 30-day window of appeal.
And moving on.
Being after 7:15 PM, the Abington Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a hearing at 500 Glenowitz Way on the petition of Michael and Tanya Menalakis,
Malakis?
close, 181 Jean Carroll Road, Abington, for a special permit under 175-32I and 175-21A, 1A, to allow an in-law apartment to be included in the new house to be constructed at 36 Belcher Street, Lot 16, Veterans Place subdivision. Property located on Assessors Plan 24, Plot 67 in the R30 zone.
Okay, that's a new construction, correct?
Yes, it is to be constructed.
Okay.
John Riley, 500 Washington Street, representing the Menelakises. Menelakas, sit to my right. Mister. And the next star running back for the Abington Green Wave.
All right. Here we go.
Son and daughter with us. Mr. Egan, Steve Egan is also Egan Development, he will be the builder of the house. This is a special permit under 32I for the construction of an in-law apartment in their new home in Abington. The Menelakises presently live in Abington. They are building this new home in Abington off of Plymouth Street so that her mom and dad can move in and live in the apartment, the in-law apartment that's attached to the right side of the house. We've submitted the plans to you to show you the floor plan. They conform in all respects with section 175-32I as far as, you know, the design, the size and all. The house is being connected to municipal water, municipal sewer. They do understand, we've talked to them about the requirement that they submit the annual affidavit to document that there's a relative living on both sides of the house. As I mentioned, it'll be her parents for the next many years, we hope. Basically, gentlemen, I won't belabor the point. They basically have complied with all of the requirements of our zoning bylaw, and I hope that you'll approve their special permit.
I have no questions.
Anybody?
No, Mr. Riley handled the question I'd always liked, that make sure they know they have to fill out that form every year.
Andrew?
And it is a nice piece of property in that, so, and it's smart to do it you know, beforehand, the in-law apartment, so you get it done right the first time.
Right.
You good? Okay, anyone from the audience? Any questions or anything? Okay, close it to the audience.
Looks
Back
pretty
to,
straightforward.
Marshall, anything?
No problem, this is good, doing the whole thing all up front at once.
Okay. All right, anyone like to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve the petition of Michael and Tanya Manalakis, 181 Jean Carroll Road, Abington, for a special permit under 175-32I and 175-21A 1A to allow an in-law apartment to be included in the new house to be constructed at 36 Belcher Street, Lot 16, Veterans Place subdivision. The property is located on Assessor's Plan 24, Plot 67 in the R30 zone.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Moving on. Yep,
The Town of Abington Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing Thursday, September 14th at 7:20 PM, 500 Glenowitz Way, Abington, on the petition of Sprague Realty Trust, 50 Sprague Street, Hyde Park, for a special permit and finding under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, an extension of pre-existing non-conforming use for the 175-21H2, open lot storage of transport vehicles and trailers, 175-21H3, open lot storage of trucks and trailers used for temporary storage, for the installation of an office trailer, and also use the property as a staging area for the Mass DOT Route 18 widening project, requesting waiver of environmental impact statement under 175-35. The property is grandfathered in industrial zone and presently renamed Technology Business Zone at 1325 Bedford Street. Property located on Assessors Plan 64, Plot 71 in the Technology Business Zone.
okay.
Good evening, I'm Matthew Watsky. I'm here as counsel for the applicant. With me is Joe Gioso. He is the president of P. Gioso and Sons, and will be overseeing the Route 18 widening project and all of the activities that are going on here on this property. The application is actually, we can look at it in two pieces. There's call it the permanent and the temporary. The temporary is everything that's associated with the Route 18 widening project. I'll focus on the permanent first because it is really so simple. You have this existing operation. It's the processing of material. Basically, as P. Gioso and Sons does a project like the Route 18 project, and they excavate the asphalt and the concrete and everything. It has to go someplace. It gets processed into smaller material. It's turned into a product and it's reused. That processing activity has been ongoing and it's not changing. But they have employees who work out of this property, and what they'd like to do is refers to the office trailer, is to have an office trailer put in so that instead of having a porta potty that's outside and unheated, they have one inside the office trailer. They would like to have actual running water for the employees who are working on site, and to have storage and to have a place to keep their plans and records and the like. So it's simply placement of a 8 by 28 foot office trailer that would be situated on the property, so that they can run the processing business out of that office trailer. I'm not sure that it even actually triggers the requirement for a special permit to modify a pre-existing legal non-conforming use, but let's say discretion the better part of valor, go ahead and request it. So that's the permanent part. The temporary part is that P. Gioso and Sons is actually going to be the contractor for MassDOT to do the 4-mile-long widening of Route 18, putting a lane in each direction, doing all the traffic safety improvements and telephone poles and lights and drainage and sewer and water, all of that stuff. And This property is perfectly situated for them to stage their equipment. If they've got a tractor trailer, more likely, let's say 4 or 5 or 6 tractor trailers that need to be parked overnight when the project's not underway, this is where they would propose to do it. They'll need to have certain materials and tools and supplies kept safe and dry and secure. They would put however many they need of a sort of a storage trailer that would get placed on the site and just sort of lined up in the pre-existing developed area of the property and kept there for the duration of the project, however long they need it. All of this, all of that work, the way they would manage the equipment has been addressed by MassDOT in environmental impact statement, and all of the earth moving and the like has already been covered by MassDOT in a stormwater management permit and those kinds of details. So that's why there's a request to waive the environmental impact statement that's locally, because it's already been covered by the state in its project-wide assessment of the impacts of the project. And PG Ostos and Sons will be subject to all the conditions that the state has imposed through the contract on and through the permits that the state has. So, Joe, if you want to add anything more, or we can just sort of open it to the board to ask some questions if you want more information.
Gentlemen?
Yeah, I have it's to the town's benefit, I realize that, to use that property. During this time frame, you're talking how long, 5 years, am I?
The contract with the DOT has a completion 4.5 years. We just received that notice to proceed, as a matter of fact, on Monday of this week.
Right.
So 4.5 years from September, middle of September.
The reason I asked that question, because of noise, those factors, hours of operation, so that the neighbors that abut that is concerned that we can address that tonight and possibly do a 5-year or something like that, and then come in front of the board if you need to extend it. That's the big comment I have.
Sure.
And do you have an idea in terms of hours of operation, what they'd be?
There will not be very much night work. Certainly, we try to avoid it as much as possible. Some of the intersections are just so congested, as you guys know better than we do. Pond Street, Route 58 is one example. There's several in Weymouth. So there are certain operations at those locations that may require night. We haven't determined them yet. Certainly the town and the abutters will be notified. But more typically, hours of operation are 7 to 3:30, 5 days a week.
So we could condition that to obviously a little bit longer, 7 coincides with the town's hours of noise.
I think just to clarify, there's hours of operation when you're like on Route 18 moving the poles and sewer and what have you, and then there's hours of operation on, the lot we're discussing, 1325 Bedford Street, where I would certainly hope you wouldn't be, processing material at, 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. at that point.
Yes, we agree.
I don't think it's...
You have the right to determine.
Yeah, we can condition.
Well, exactly, that's what I'm
going to...
Years, you
Right.
have the right to do all of that.
Precisely, where I wouldn't say, you can't work on an intersection in Weymouth. We couldn't one way or another.
Right.
Or we,
Correct me if I'm-
be one thing to just say, well, after a certain time, you can basically just transit a truck in and out, but you can't be breaking up material or doing those sorts of things.
Now, just so you'll know about Mr. Mullen, that when the school was just built in town and I lived next door to it, and when they did need to do the night hours, being in a butter, they would forewarn us and let us know so that, and they try to minimize it. They're very accommodating, the contractors were, and I'm sure you will be the same, but there is a noise factor in this town, 7 o'clock, I know that, and that's the Board of Health.
Yes, that's the health agent enforces that.
Yeah.
that's overall in the town. With regards to this site, they're asking you, it's up to your discretion.
Yeah.
Right. Does anything currently exist on the site, or is it just empty land?
It's, the site has been graded.
Is there a pile of dirt there, a huge pile of dirt, or?
Well, the site has been graded since the mid-1980s, and since the grading was completed, and there was an order of conditions, the wetlands and a certificate of compliance. So that's all been finished, and that's long since done. Since then, the company has continued to use the site just for the material processing. So they'll bring in the raw materials, the concrete, the asphalt, the stone, and it accumulates over a period of 2 to 3 weeks. Typically 2.5 weeks, let's say on average, until they have a large enough pile, and then they'll go ahead and they'll process it so that it's crushed into the smaller pieces, and then that processed material is basically gravel, and that's used by the company, gets hauled off the site as needed for roadbed or sewer projects.
And how long has this been in business?
It's been going
Oh,
on.
it has really?
No, it's, as you drive in on the right, it's on the left, and they usually have a big truck that they put the material in.
Okay,
It's been there since 1986, I think.
okay. And that pile of dirt's been there too? I mean, basically, that's how high it goes?
It grows and then it shrinks because
It goes and
it's
it shrinks.
constantly in process. It's like they're processing material as a product to then be able to either sell or to use in their own projects for the state projects.
And you have intentions of building something else there, or anything that's, during this project, are you
Not during
permanently going to leave anything after the project?
The only structure that we're looking to have remain permanently is the office trailer that I mentioned.
Okay. Nothing else, just that?
Nothing else for this project. It's entirely possible that they decide someday in the future to redevelop the property and not use it as for processing anymore, but that's for another day.
I'll speak about that.
This is Mr. Frank Gioso.
Frank Gioso, the trustee of Springville Trust. There are people interested in developing the land, but there is no hookup available. We had one 4 years ago and built a 9,100 square foot building, but we couldn't provide the sewer facility.
So this is just for this project here, for the 4 or 5 years that...
You can find somebody
Yeah, this...
Right.
I wasn't even aware of this area and the situation that went on until a couple of months ago, and I don't know whether somebody on one of the town boards had driven by and seen it.
Yeah, okay.
And asked me, and I said, I'm unaware of the whole
I
thing.
know, yeah, right, because I've seen the pile there, I've always wondered.
And I approached the Giosos and to determine, what are you doing?
Right.
You know?
Uh-huh.
We didn't have the records, and apparently they'd gone through this before, and they had all the records
Okay.
to prove out the pre-existing non-conforming use.
Okay. All right.
Now we have.
We have it on record.
We have it
Okay.
here now.
All right.
I didn't at that juncture, and I don't know what ever happened, because they claimed they've been through this once before.
So it's grandfathered in then, correct?
In my opinion, it is.
We lose a board member?
What's that?
I
Did
know
we lose a
from-
board member?
From one of the letters we received, there's some concerns with the neighbors in terms of, traffic and any steps you might take in terms of remediation for trucks coming in and out, detail or anything like that. Do you have an idea about day-to-day, how many trucks will be coming in and out, and you envision?
In this information here,
Yeah.
when I read this letter here, and what was being alleged, it requires, it says here that they wish to require the applicant to prepare an environmental impact statement, which is number 1 on the list on page 1, including a site plan, which I have, a traffic study, which I have, stormwater management, which is here, wetlands impact, which is in here. And they claim that there is no proof it's non-conforming pre-existing. And that is also in here, in my opinion. Nobody has come in when I asked girls in the office and seen this file, which is why maybe this letter was written like
Okay,
this.
all right, yeah.
But,
You have all the
some of
answers there,
these
yeah.
statements, the impact, traffic, et cetera, are older, but these people have been through everything that they were discussing here. and
Okay.
Concerned about.
All right. Do we lose Dennis?
For now, yeah.
Okay. John, you have anything?
No, the big conditions to me would be, condition you'd have to do is the hours, the noise, get that, a handle of that, and a 5-year deal, and then after that, if they need more time, they would have to come in front of the board again.
Yeah, Bill?
I'm sure the
Yeah,
authors
no.
of this
No.
want to speak.
Okay.
Plus the butters.
What's that?
The butters.
Your butters, yeah, no, I know. I just want to see if the board had anything else. Just kind of hold off on Dennis, see if there's any.
But you have, truck-wise,
Oh, yeah, was that, so do you have any idea in terms of that, with traffic, or?
So, we do a typical volume of work on a yearly basis, which is within a range. We own a certain number of trucks, and whether those trucks are coming from projects in Cambridge or Boston, we have projects in West Roxbury. Our flow of trucks is pretty consistent. For the next 4 years, or 3 years in particular, the traffic will, arise from the Route 18 project, so that the hauls are much shorter. So to the overall impact on Route 18, it may be actually less traffic of our truck traffic. The impact on the site will be virtually the same. It's the same amount of traffic.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I guess we'll open to the, hold on. Dennis, I just want to make sure if you had any questions.
Oh, I didn't.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure, that's all. Okay, we'll open it up to the floor.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
no, you're not.
Do you stand up and,
Hi, I'm Kathy Creighton. I'm 53 Vineyard Road.
okay.
I went and looked at the file that Nancy had, and I did not see traffic or water or any kind of report. I did come downtown to see it. So the traffic report, does it have the number of trucks in it and when the hours of operation are?
There's too much in here for me to have gone through.
Is that an old file or a new file?
This is a new file with old documentation that was provided to me because when I went to the owners of the property, Gioso, and said, hey, what's going on here? Whoa. And they told me they'd been through this before, and I said, I looked up the address, and I didn't have anything, nothing. And where the file went or whatever, I don't know. But they had copies of everything that they had provided prior to somebody else prior to.
Did they give it to the zoning board, or was it?
No, they gave it to the building department, because I'm zoning enforcement, and I wanted to know what's going on. So you can come down and have a copy of this public record, anything and everything.
But as far as the zoning board of appeals, this is the first time that the zoning board of appeals has heard of this, correct?
Correct.
And the operation in the 80s when they were out there, they did fill the land.
Yes, they did.
They filled the land. DEP was out there a few times. The gravel crushing operation started later in the later 2000s, from what I recall. Probably all my neighbors would agree. And that was probably after technology business got approved. So I don't believe that they are grandfathered. And I think it's a non-conforming use because it's open storage, open lot storage. As far as I'm concerned, in the farm environmental impact statement with the actual current traffic should be done. If you guys have seen that entrance, you know, that entrance and exit, it is not a standard MHD exit entrance. There's no turning radius. And as it is, the traffic on Route 18 flumps. And that's why they're widening it. And at 5 o'clock, you can't take a right or a left onto Route 18. It is backed up, almost back to factory paint some nights. And with this traffic, none of us are going to be able to go anywhere. They've been a really horrible neighbor. They run trucks all the time outside 7 to 3. There's dust, there's noise. They're not very careful drivers either. And we found them to be kind of disgraceful current operation. The piles of dirt are 25, 30 feet high. They're next to the wetlands. There's gravel crushing. We don't know where the dirt's coming from, whether it's clean or not. You know, when you're talking about road traffic, you know, road construction projects. And let's see, what else do you want to say? And as far as the stormwater system, it was designed for a particular set of situation, not all this stuff on the property, and all the extra fill that they brought in. And by the way, they've already started to tar the property, which puts impervious surface there, which would make it require stormwater. And I just don't think we should be approving this, and I feel like an environmental impact report. I mean, us Highway did one for the road. They didn't do one for geostage property, for the spray through the trust property. They did one for the road. The environmental impacts statement that you guys require is supposed to be specifically for this property, and it's supposed to have everything in it with the current conditions. You don't have a site layout that shows where all the laydown's going to go.
Yes, you do.
You do? Yeah. It wasn't in the application that I saw in Nancy's office.
Oh,
Is that made as
not
part
with
of
the application. They have a site layout here of,
existing conditions?
that was approved, existing conditions, I believe, I saw in here. Again, I only briefly went through this, but I think you should take a look at it.
What date is on the plan?
This one is just a wooded area here in 94. There's a lot more stuff.
That looks like conservation filings here.
But
From 94.
It is a conservation.
there's a lot of information here to go through, and I haven't gone through. But when I read this documentation, I was
It's changed a lot since.
concerned. This one here is going to be deal somewhat more with the site with, this is 2.5 acres and another date on it. I think it's probably inappropriate for me to
I
waste
think
your
what you're
time.
looking at
going
is
through
conservation filings, and the last filing was in 2003. I did see some drawings from 2006 in that filing. Don't believe that there's any zoning. I don't believe there's any business permits. There's any fill permits from the planning board. Huge amounts of soil that we brought in and out, and this has not been to the planning board years ago.
There was,
There's a letter in there from Sean Potter, on Wrestling 4 Years Old, about the fill and how they were supposed to comply with it.
there was a filing in here I briefly read from DEP with regards to the filling of an area and the riprap that was put around, and they were waiting for materials to come in to fill it. I remember reading that.
Yeah.
I know you were concerned about filling.
But do you know what date it is?
You have to go through, there's hours and hours of work to go through to determine what was permitted at what time.
But we should know that if we're going to decide on a permit, to decide if someone is actually exempt, you know, from being commercial, can be commercial highway instead of being technology business. I think this is a technology business case, and I think this is an open lot storage. I do think that this is a tremendous impact in the entire town. We are going to deal with this traffic. Everyone in this room, and everyone listening, every single day. It is going to be tremendous. The Mass Highway road work is going to impact us. But this traffic coming in and out of this facility is going to be tremendous. You're going to have all the workers, all the way down materials, all the dump trucks coming in and out. and you're gonna have gravel crushing operation, and then he's gonna be bringing in dirt from other areas. How big are these piles gonna get? Is there a permit for the gravel? Is there a permit for the gravel crushing? Is there any kind of permit up there? I guess I'm frustrated because it looks like it's a very unpermitted operation, it's a very bad neighbor, and we're just gonna give him carte blanche and let him go back out there and do some more.
Well, it does seem interesting that all the paperwork has just been found, and, you know, they're going over it now.
And I think that's all conservation paperwork. I do not believe that there is any zoning or planning paperwork out there on this.
Perhaps, well, she does, because Kathy and I have worked on it, because we should say, are you still on the Conservation Commission?
Conservation Commission, 10
years
years,
that a
and
lot
then I
of them
retired,
have been
and I'm back on it. I did look at that file that Nancy had from Conservation
Yeah.
earlier this week, and I'm pretty familiar with it.
So Kathy and I have spent years on, because this is a very old project, the widening, and so we've been at meetings when I was on the Conservation Commission, which was quite a few years ago, and so that's we knew all the papers off by heart. We're pretty sure that there isn't. You asked, was there a certificate for the stone crushing? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, is there any kind of operation permit from the town? I mean, I feel like we have an illegal operation going on.
So I'm not too sure if that's before the board, actually, but we can be pretty sure there isn't.
I don't think there is, and I guess I'm having trouble with this, that we're going to approve something. And frankly, it is not our problem that the contractor won the job and wants to use the property here. I don't know why it's not being done at the airbase where they have proper turnouts and have lights and traffic control is already set up. And why it's being put in Abington is beyond me.
But it is, right? It is. So, and they have to.
You guys prove it, so.
Seems like a lot of
that's already
questions, that's
been
for sure.
approved, I
And
think,
I
hasn't it?
feel like I'm not getting enough answers here tonight. I really think that at a minimum we should continue this to try to
Well,
get the answers straightened out.
And also to say to you and everybody, but this did not exist, and it would not be in front of us tonight if it had not been for Mr. Gioso, because I don't know where ours went. And all of a sudden, they provided them all and they copied them.
Dory Hall, what Kathy pointed out here is that in the past, everybody has tried to look for some type
Yeah.
of business certificate that cannot be found at Town Hall. The papers your building inspector is referring to is old filings due to conservation. There is nothing in planning, there's nothing from the selectmen, there's nothing from the Board of Health. All the neighbors have gone through the filing. We have all seen these conservation filings. They're at DEP too. This has nothing to do with business. This was filling in wetlands and the neighbors complaining about it.
Okay, anyone else? Good.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mark. I'm the general manager and managing partner of Sorrel, which is directly across the street. It's within 20 minutes of this entranceway. Thank you, Kathy, for speaking so eloquently, but we just strongly oppose this. We just think it's going to be a nightmare for the restaurant. We just started up a restaurant, put a bunch of money in it, trying to make it vibrant, good scene for Abington. So far, the response has been wonderful. But, we're opening for lunches now, and we're just going, oh my God, we can't open for lunch. This is going to be a traffic nightmare. Stay away from Sorrel because we're just really concerned about all of that stuff, as well as everything else that Kathy so brought up. But, we like that Route 18 has to be expanded, get that.
Yeah.
But we're just wondering if we could somehow
Not have it
the
straight
seat here
across.
or some other place. This is centrally located. We're right across here.
Yes, you're right.
And we just came here. We're
Right.
5 months old,
Yep.
You see the cars there, it's like, so, I just envision that being a nightmare.
Okay, thank you for your input on that. I can understand what you're saying. Sir?
Robert Freeman, 23 Vigid Road. I live right behind Sorrel's there. I just want to reiterate Kathy's point about why can't they put it down in the neighborhoods? There's plenty of room for to stage everything. Just why do they have to
Yeah. We still lost it, but yeah.
Sir?
Yeah, to that, I read it, yeah, I used to.
Is there a permit for gravel
I remember.
We don't know.
It's not
That was
before
our
us.
question.
That's not what we have to decide here
Yeah.
tonight.
Before you approve an additional operation,
that's not before us tonight. That's a zoning enforcement question that, you know, Marshall has to determine ultimately. From what he said at the beginning, it sounds like it's his opinion, which is why probably in council with the applicant, currently, unless I'm misspeaking, it's the zoning enforcement officer's opinion that this is a grandfathered business.
There's no documents to support that.
Otherwise I wouldn't say it.
There was nothing in the file.
I'm looking at it.
Well, that wasn't there when we looked, that just.
I believe you. I wasn't there when I went to look for it either. It was just provided to me. I think,
We have the opportunity to review that file, make comments before you make a decision tonight.
If it's an unpermitted business, whether or not we give permission, he could still shut it down and have them seek permission.
Another question is the traffic. You did submit Board of Health today, legal document 3 years ago, on a copy of the street. And in that was a traffic study. Of course, that's why widening Route 18, so the double service events. That property owner is putting in auxiliary lanes on both ways. Traffic going either way on the property. That's not being proposed. So any truck here, you go northbound or southbound, trying to enter the property, is going to stop all flow of traffic. Using the traffic. We have asked twice tonight, what are the truck trips per day on the property? You asked the applicant, didn't get a number. Why you asked it? Gentleman over here, saying it's in there, you didn't get a number. What's the truck trips per day on the property? I think you should know that before it's approved. And it's been proven that the truck trips per day, what you're asking for is a 5-year traffic. The project's going to start in Wayne, move its way down Avenue. So for the first 4.5 years, all this, the road here, across the Sorrells, is not going to change, except for the addition of large, slow-moving trucks that accelerate slow, decelerate slow. And we're asking for an EIS to study the traffic. Would the traffic be horrible? Would it delay the ambulance times going to social hospital? Is it going to delay police and fire response times around the night? From the south of Abington to social hospital, there's not a lot of routes to get to the social hospital. This is not going to enforcement. Oh, I understand. After 5 years, it's going to be fine. 5 years is a long period of time to get there, and we're not having the facts yet. We did look at the, like I said, we did look at the file wasn't there, it's here now.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, can we just, go ahead.
I have a commercial property in town of Abington.
And your name and address?
43 Highland Road.
Okay.
Apple Tree Road.
It's before the DOT now.
But, I don't know what happens with town's files.
Is this what you would install?
All my conservation files have disappeared. On numerous occasions, the conservation cease and desist on property. They have to, I have to replace them, okay? I had to have them signed for it the last time, they're not gonna keep replacing them. I don't know what happens to these files. I had trouble finding building files. So I believe Mr. Joseph and them probably have their files correct, because they have the documentation. And I won't say who's taking these files, but somebody's getting rid of these files.
Okay,
I have one more comment. I just think that the environmental impact statement, I just want to reiterate that it's supposed to be about the current conditions, just 4.5 years. No matter what, those files are old that you have in front of you. You know, the traffic study should be updated, the stormwater should be looked at, the impact of the dirt and the noise, the hours of operation. You guys, that stuff should be really coordinated much better. And the plan that I saw, the site plan that I saw that was in the file, didn't show you where everything was going to be. Where's the laydown? What's going to be tarred? What's going to be, where are the cars, the personal cars being parked? Where's the equipment going to be? Where's the storage boxes? Where's all the laydown materials, concrete, the piping, the electrical equipment, the steel, where's everything going? You don't have a plan that shows you that, so you don't really know what you're approving, frankly. So I have a problem that they're asking for an exemption from something that everyone else has to do, and that I think you should make them submit it.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. You know, it just seems like it's not the best place for it. I mean, just good town planning. It's like putting the storm right in the middle of the storm. You know, I know it's easy for this gentleman here. He owns that property. You know, and it's probably, you know, makes sense to him financially, but there's got to be a better place somewhere on this planet that we can do that staging area.
Okay.
You know, it just seems like very, very. Are we thinking here? Are we thinking where else can we put this? You know.
Okay.
I mean, and for our business again, I just think it'll be, you know, a nightmare.
All right.
If I could speak to staging for one moment, sir, and to the board. It is a massive project. There's no two ways about it. It's 4 miles of roadway, and it's infeasible that we would stage the entire project out of one facility. So the bridge location in particular in Weymouth, where the old granite countertop plays, that will be a substantial staging area for us, you know, in the town of Weymouth. We're actively looking for other staging areas also in the town of Weymouth. So I don't want the board or the abutters to think that you're receiving the full impact of 4 miles of construction. That is not the case. Furthermore, the project has substantial permanent and temporary easements, which we would be allowed to use, you know, as part of our construction project. And, you know, you could imagine many smaller staging areas up and down Route 18 and you know, the impact that might cause. We're looking for somewhat more centralized and more logical places to work out of, and this is one.
Any others? I mean, where else would you said this is one. Where else are you assuming?
Identify the other places that you're
So the bridge location,
Okay.
again, will be a major staging area for us, not even in the town of Abington. Opposite Shea Drive, you know, the entrance to Union Point, is actually the location of our 2 office. We're going to be using those buildings as offices, and we'll have a substantial staging area next to our offices. So you are not, you know, the only staging facility.
So again, you're starting from Weymouth and going down to Abington? Is that how you're doing it?
No. We'll have operations, you know, in both towns. The relocation of the utility poles is one of the major undertakings. It will take years to get all of those poles moved. You know, the poles have to go back about 15 feet from their existing alignments. But in both towns, the wires are principally on one side of the road only.
Yep.
So our focus is to add a travel lane opposite of the telephone poles and wires as soon as we can. And it won't be, you know, a 1/10 of a mile at a time. We're looking to build 1/4 mile, 1/2 mile or more lanes added to Route 18, and certainly in our section of Abington as early as possible. And from that point on, you're now dealing with 3 lanes available. You can imagine one being dedicated to traffic during working out, not traffic, to construction during working hours, but you still have 2 viable lanes during construction. After hours, you may very well have 3 lanes, you know, within a year or 2. So our overall goal and the goal of the project is to help the traffic as soon as we can. One more aspect of our facility is that we are requesting a permit from DOT to actually add another driveway entrance to our facility. And in that regard, helping the turning and sight distances and you know, having better flow in and out of the facility.
May I follow up on that and saying, is this to widen and improve the existing driveway entrance or to add a driveway entrance?
Completely separate entrance.
And where would that be?
It is designed a few hundred feet to the north, is it?
Yeah, it's gonna be
Northeast.
north of the restaurant, up next to, I think it's 1343, I believe it is, where the,
Buses?
yeah, up closer to there, right on the property line. So it'll eliminate a lot of the traffic opposite the restaurant, coming in and out of the restaurant.
It's gonna be wider, is it gonna be a wider? Now, I mean, this is a huge project, I mean, well, you just mentioned the buses, I mean, you're gonna have to deal with buses coming in and out of there, and,
Now, when you do the bridge, let me understand, does that shut that traffic on Route 18 completely north-south at that point?
There are 3 designated weekends where the Route 18 traffic will be shut down and bypassed along Pond Street. Is it Pond Street? Okay, I should know. Thank you, though. Along Pond Street. They are 72-hour shutdowns, but other than that, no.
That's it, to replace it?
Yeah. Now, during non-rush hour times, 9 to 2, for example, we may have alternating one-way traffic. That's just the reality of construction. But as soon as we can get a lane added, that alternating situation goes away.
okay, is there anyone else that hasn't spoken and wanna add to it?
When we start this project on our site, we filled out the site as permitted by the Conservation Commission and DEP. We finished the filling in the 80s, more or less, and we stabilized all the slopes and contained everything, all the runoffs on site, so there's no overflow into the wetland. We did not fill any wetlands, not filling any wetlands at any time. We started the operation back in 88, 89, the material processing operation. Before we started, I met with the building inspector or someone in town and see if it was a permissible use. According to the zoning bylaws at that time, it was commercially used processing material was permitted. That's why we started the process back then. We're way in the back, nobody hears us, nobody sees us. As Mr. Adams say, nobody knew that we were there.
Right, yeah.
So the only thing that is happening, the neighbors see, the others, it's the trucks coming in and out, and nothing much more of activities. Back in 2000, 2002, something like that, same question arose about that we were illegally doing something. I met with the town manager at the time, and I showed that we reviewed the bylaws. We were still permitted under the bylaws, the zoning bylaws, to use. And so we were being grandfathered ever since.
All right,
So
okay,
we've been there since 1989.
okay, yep. All right, one more, go ahead, sir.
Entrance exit, different places to store it, agent, all tenant. We don't know for sure. Negotiate, we can try to do it.
Well, we'll talk about that tonight and try to get something nailed down here about the hours and the project itself. I mean, we need a direct answers on hours and stuff like that.
Got a question back.
I just want to reiterate that I don't understand how if we don't have any paperwork that shows that the zoning board or the selectmen give them a permit to do the operations that they're doing on the site, is that you can grant, you know, a grandfather of this regulation. I don't understand it, because from my perspective, in the 80s, when he was talking about, there was no gravel crushing out there. He was bringing dirt in, definitely. The 90s, he did the same thing. But it really wasn't until the late 2000s that I saw it, and I know technology business was in there, because I was one of the authors of technology business, so I really do know that it was in for that. And I think he is subject to technology business, and I just don't think it's allowable use. And I don't understand how we're talking about grandfather. We've spent a lot of time talking about everything else, but I feel like he's not, he shouldn't be grandfather. I don't think you have any paperwork to prove it.
Okay, so I'm going to close it to the floor.
And it's new use.
May I just respond to that issue,
well.
or do we not need to worry about it?
Oh, excuse me?
May I address just that issue, or do you not care?
Can I just
No,
reiterate?
no, Frank, let me deal with it. So, if I may, the reason that there were no permits for the processing operation is that at the time when the processing operation began, and it was documented in letters, correspondence with the town, the processing operation was permissible as of right, meaning it was in a zone where the processing of materials for sale or for use off-site, it was a permissible use as of right under zoning, and it needed no special permit, needed no variance, didn't need a zoning permit. And so there's no application because it was allowed as of right. It was documented to the town. We've recently had correspondence with Elizabeth Shea, the planning office, and we've provided her with the documentation of that. So I understand neighbors digging through the files and trying to sort of reconstruct the past and drawing conclusions, but sometimes there's a good reason why you don't see a document. It's because it wasn't necessary. So the operation has been... There we go.
Can I just have one more thing to say? This is a new use you're talking about too, gentlemen. You know, this is the gravel crushing. We've been focusing on the gravel crushing because he did ask for that special permit.
No,
but we're also
didn't ask for a
talking
special
about a new
permit for
use.
gravel crushing.
This is, he's going to start an operation that he's going to bring, it's going to be a site laydown area, it's going to be an office trailer. There is a new use going on, and he's bringing in a lot more open lot storage. So I do think we still need to go back, and I would like to know what the date of the letter is that they're referring to that they have for the documentation from that they've sent in, because I was not able to see it, and I haven't heard a date yet.
Okay, I've got, really,
Okay, thank you.
it's been a long time here, so I want to close it to the floor. I appreciate everyone's input, but sometimes you have to hear everyone's input here. I mean, I can understand the neighborhood, I can understand the neighbors, I can understand the frustration. Again, we're looking at a business that a lot of us didn't know was there, and it's kind of embarrassing in a way, but there is paperwork. Marshall has gone through it. Marshall, has the town lawyer gone through it? I mean, did...
Yeah, we went through it and talked about it. This is the zoning back. I don't remember what the date is on this one right now, but I went through it, Marion went through it, and I agreed that it's a grandfathered use. And it was allowed in the industrial use is what I believe it was, and now it was changed, I think, in 2000 off the top of my head to TB, because
of the treatment plant
right.
or whatever they were.
Yeah, they're trying to put
We just had a case.
the trash thing or something like that, and that's because I was looking at it, and I said, hold on, and until we could establish that, I said, well, we'll continue operating. I mean, and he provided the documentation, and I'm satisfied with it.
All right, so we're going to bring it back to the board here, and
Hold on.
everyone can talk about it.
So in terms of the operation itself, though, is that permitted? Or is there a permit required? I mean, I'm just looking at...
Back when it was being done, it was allowed by right.
Would 49-1 be applicable, where in terms of the processing of fill material, where they need something from the Board of Selectmen that describes,
They were doing this prior to,
Prior to that, the
prior
selectmen
to all that.
approved-
This
Yep.
was, this was allowed back then.
Sean Carter letter in there.
And
Close it,
the,
I'm sorry.
I just had it and turned away from it.
Is that what that
But I
yellow
don't
tab
know.
is? That yellow
yeah.
tab?
Well, because how
Maybe.
many?
Hold on one second.
I know, I was thinking the same thing about the fill. I
Yeah,
mean, I think there's a vote on that.
Well, this was faxed in 2000. This is place for manufacturing, assembly, packaging of goods that are all resulting cinder, dust, flashing fumes, gases, odors. Matter spoken vapor be effectively confined to the site or be disposed of in a manner that does not create a nuisance or hazardous safety or health in industrial is allowed use.
I mean, I'm just looking at 49-1 though, and I mean, this is sort of precisely.
Well, I don't know,
the issue
when was 49-1?
that- All I'm seeing is when it was amended, but I mean, they're asking for a plot plan describing the subject property and what the fill, where the fill will be placed, description of the fill, how many truckloads would be required to bring in the property, the size of the truck, the weight, the truck routes, the proposed hours of trucking, description of the measures to be taken to control fill material, and dust. I mean, as I'm hearing sort of the issue.
I agree with what you're saying and whether or not, but this has been going on for and allowed.
Since grandfathered in.
Whether it was incorrectly or correctly,
But
I
what,
think, but I mean.
what Andrew is talking about is a regulation that would apply even if it is going. Nobody's
Even if it's
actually.
an allowed use.
That's right. So, the use may be grandfathered, but the regulation of, yes, that's right. That's a regulation that, everybody has to apply with. I think those are, obviously the issue isn't a trailer for the poor guys to go to the bathroom. And the real issue is that it's going to be a staging area. And also it's going to be a place for trucks and trailers. And I was reminded, actually, in this conversation of a meeting a few months ago where the poor guy was trying to construct, a tree place where he's going to put trucks and all during the winter time in the technology district. And I was telling him that this is a technology district, our kids need it, we don't have another one. And the poor guy was looking at me in disbelief because he was trying to tell me that everywhere else in that technology district they are doing construction at the moment, and the kind of work he was looking at. And so this is a good example of that. But I was wondering if it came, I apologise for being out because I didn't think I was voting, but is this going before the planning board at all? Or because Kathy mentioned a traffic study, and normally that would be a big issue here, I think, where they're talking about putting in trucks and they're going to go in and out. But this must be part of the huge project that they're doing at the moment of Route 18, and there must be a traffic project there, a traffic study there done. But it might be only, as Kathy said, it might only be for the actual roadway and not for the site. So I would think that if we're before the planning board would ask for a traffic study, saying how many trucks are going in and out, what kind of use that would be. That would be a fair thing before you can make a decision about whether this should be, because the real issue is whether you're going to have it as a staging site.
It's very vague. I agree with the vagueness of what it's going to be. And the grandfather has been addressed, and he's the enforcement officer, so you have to respect that part. As far as knowing how many trucks, I think that's an issue. I brought that question up. I haven't been satisfied with the answer. But knowing what's going to be in that yard, because that's a big yard, I get it. I don't know if you're going to still do the others work too. But that would give us a better idea as to address the hours, noise, if we approved it.
And it's going to give the public a chance to look at the files.
Yes, true.
Yes.
Make copies of it all, digest it, look at 49-1 or whatever we're talking about, in regards, does it apply, contact council, whatever they want to do to alleviate their concerns.
What's before us tonight is really two special permit requests, which is 17521H2 and 17521H3. It's Marshall's opinion that the usage is grandfathered. So what they're asking for is permission for open lot storage of transport vehicles and trailers, and open lot storage of trucks and trailers used for temporary storage. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're voting on.
It's a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's a big lot. I don't think it's in our purview to say, well, you can put something on this side of the lot and not put something on that side of the lot. I don't necessarily buy that. I think it's within our purview to say that it's reasonable to expect operating hours like from 7 to 3, you know, with the exception of, you know, if you got...
Right now, it's 7 to 3:30.
7 to 3:30,
Might wanna make it
whatever
more.
your specific, you know, intended hours of construction are, and then, so obviously you have a chance to park the trucks and go home. I don't know about this whole traffic study thing, because the road's gonna be a horror show for 5 years, so I don't know. Yeah, honest to God, I mean, wow, it's gonna ruin traffic.
Well,
Yeah.
except that we're only asked to talk about a specific area, because there would have been a traffic study done of this whole project. In fact, I think I remember reading one a long time ago. So there is a traffic study done of that. But we're asked to look about one particular area that there's a business across the road that's going to be directly affected by it, and an area that's there's abutters around that, of course, are going to be affected by it too. So, I mean, should the business and the abutters lose out to the greater good? I don't know. Or should they not? You know, but that's because whatever you decide today is just for that specific area. We're not being asked to sign off on the plan,
No.
you know, of the highway. We're not being asked to do anything like that. We're just asked for this one particular area, whether they can use that as a staging and place their trucks and all in there.
Actually, to grind too. Are you gonna be,
That don't
won't be
exist.
grinding that?
The requested special permits don't have anything to do with the processing. That's an ongoing
But
activity.
will you be processing that too?
That will continue to go on, that's right.
Okay, and more than usual, or?
Anticipating there will be any increase, it's just a continued operation.
And if you do condition it, I do suggest too that you do it in a time frame, like 5 years. And then they come in front of the board again if they need more time. You just don't want this to go on eternity.
So anybody want to make a proposal here, or?
I'll make a motion.
Motion?
On,
Well, we would, I believe, we've got a pre-existing non-conforming use, and they're seeking to intensify that use. I believe you need to make a finding that it's not going to be more detrimental, shall not be substantially more detrimental than the existing use to the neighborhood. And then, if the board sees fit to grant a special permit to intensify the two uses that are labeled,
The two requested,
yes, the two.
But to determine that, you'd almost need some more information.
You have to do a study or get more information?
If you go from what you just said, wouldn't you?
Well, I was talking about traffic study, but as I think about it, the key probably is the time that everybody's talking about. Because if it's over at, is it 4:30?
3:30, they said, but I
3:30?
think 4 would be more.
So that's when the restaurant starts up, that's when people
No,
come
he's
back
now
to their
got
home.
noon, he said lunch.
Oh, he has lunch, so it's also... but
Lunch
that-
is on weekends?
But your work is Monday to Friday, isn't it?
Monday through Friday.
And people are on the way home in the evening time, So, I mean, the only way to blunt it, I think that its use is going to be.
Weekend work, sorry, I know I'm not supposed to, but just a question, weekend work?
Well, they specify, I think, 3 possible weekends.
When they did the bridge.
That's it?
The bridge has 3 dedicated weekends. There may be other work on weekends if it's, you know, otherwise beneficial to the major intersections and the progress of the project. But in general, we don't work weekends.
So there's your out. If you actually do timing, when it's going to happen and what time, maybe that would help the abutters and the abutting businesses if you were going to approve it. It's something that's going to happen. They need a staging zone. The construction's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to make a
Motion.
motion in favor of putting in time restrictions and a sunset, with the exception of, I guess, leaving the office trailer. I mean, that's my inclination at this point.
Sunset, though, that could be pretty late in the summer.
Yeah.
Well, I meant, you know, that when the widening project is over, that, you know, the special permits would expire at that point, with the exception of the permanent office trailer. Because I think that, in my thinking, would benefit the pre-existing business, which doesn't have any sort of facility like that at that point.
Are you suggesting 5 years too, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if at that point, if they see it's gonna run longer, then they'd just come to us for an extension.
And noise can be controlled by the health department if it gets too.
Right, well, that's hours of operation, that's the health department's bailiwick.
I mean, you gotta help your neighbors out though here. I mean, you know, with dust and noise. I mean, you do have people who live around you.
I mean, I would actually be inclined to potentially just, you know, do a continuance on this for at least until the next hearing, just to give the abutters a chance to review some of the records that they haven't had a chance to make a determination, you know, based on those, if there's any additional concerns they have,
You know,
as well as potentially maybe to review the issue with town council to see if there's any
and
permits
also,
that might be needed.
Yeah, and also you're talking about making another entrance way. Maybe they want to see that, see how that's going to work out. I mean, this gentleman here is he owns a business right across the street from me.
I think the plan for that was included in the application.
But I don't know if they have seen it. That's what I'm saying. I mean, are you widening the entrance, the main entrance that's there now? So you're just going to create another one?
Creating a new one and not using it.
Using the existing one, and plus we have proposing a new one in the northeast corner.
Well, the major thing here is that there's a lot of questions being asked about it, and the neighbors seem to not get any answers and want to look over that. I understand, I mean, we have looked it over on your end, but it just seems like there's so much more here that to satisfy the neighbor.
There's a lot of information here.
Right. So, it's up to them though, correct, that we condition?
We can make a motion.
You can.
We
can.
Does someone want to make that?
Nancy, do you know when the next meeting is?
October 12th.
So I'll make a motion to continue the petition until October 12th.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And again, I seriously think that you need to talk to the neighbors some more and show them, well, they haven't even seen that. That's all we have to say really, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Motion's carried. 7 a.m.
Motion to continue was passed, right? Motion to continue was just voted?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Grant an extension for 30 days.
All in favor, aye.
Aye. Aye, aye.
Just let everyone know that they will notify you for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Extension.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's going to be difficult during that time anyway, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
It being after
I had to live with the
7:25, the Abington Zoning Board of Appeals hold the petition of Caden Realty Trust, 60 Richard Road, Abington, for a 5-foot side yard setback variance under 175-29 and special permit under 175-35 to allow construction of attached garage within the floodplain wetland protection overlay district at 60 Richard Road, property located on Assessors Plan 10, Plot 61 and 62 in the R30 zone.
All set.
Have the floor.
You have the floor.
John Riley, 500 Washington Street. With me tonight, representing the Cadon Realty Trust, are the trustees and the owners of the house, Don and Kayla Chapman, from 60 Richard Road. This is a house located on the corner of Richard Road and Walnut Street, and I believe this is your family house.
Yes.
Right? Kayla and her husband bought it from Kayla's parents. The Chapmans, who were eager to get this done today because they're going away on a honeymoon next month,
Yes.
I believe. Yes.
I'll go to Florida.
Wow. They're submitting, they'd like to add a garage onto their house, on the right side of their house. I've submitted a copy of a plot plan. It shows the size of their lot. It's a rather large lot, but the lot has a couple of hardships built right into it. Number one is pretty much the entire left half, more than the left half, is subject to a 125-foot wide Edison utility easement. High-tension wires go right across the property there. So really can't build the garage on the left side. Would be within their Edison easement, and as you may know, Edison, they have to get permission from them to build a structure underneath the wires, but they usually do not allow structures underneath the wires. So the only logical thing is to put on the right side. It's also very logical to put on the right side because that's where the entrance to the house is. As you know, you would want to park and then walk around to the outside of the building. Moving the shape of the lot is a corner lot, kind of adds a little bit of quirkiness to the layout, and it requires the dimensional variance. Because if we tried to back up the garage, you'd be getting it closer to the wetlands, to a point where you may have to fill in some wetlands to make it work, or at least you have to build, it slopes down pretty dramatically as they go back to the rather small backyard, and then it drops down into wetlands. So the natural thing, most obviously, would be to basically line up the garage with the existing side entrance, the reason. And that's what they're proposing. But when they do that, it becomes within 15 feet of their side lot line, on the right side, as you can see there. What's shown there as a private way is actually not a way at all. It was never constructed, it's not on a plan. It's really just land owned by the landowner out back. There is a house on the other side, which is on Richard Road. The Chapmans know all their neighbors, the neighbors know what's going on. This is just a proposal to build the garage in the most logical location, but it requires a 5-foot setback variance. And also, again, because this property indeed is also in the floodplain wetlands overlay district, although we're not building in any wetlands, we need to get a special permit. From here, we'd also go to the Conservation Commission, because no matter where we put this garage, we're in the 100 feet of wetlands line, but we are not building into the wetlands. So, we respectfully request that you approve this application so that the Chapmans can get their contractor started while they go away.
Okay, so the private way, do you know who owns it?
It's the same as the owner out back.
Okay.
It was never.
It's not abandoned or anything like that.
It's not a street or a way because it was never actually a roadway designed out back there. It was just reserved as possible if someone wanted to try to put it in, they have to start the process at the end, the subdivision control office.
Okay.
That was not done.
Because in here, in the application, it states that it's an undeveloped paper street.
Yeah, it shows like that on the here, but it's not, I can show you a copy of it.
That's all right, for us as a board, we should have that,
Should have one.
stating that they got the use, because as far as we're concerned, it's a paper street, and we're back to that same situation, making it difficult. And if we find out that they can't use it, then we look pretty bad.
Well, regardless if it's a paper street or not, it's really, it doesn't conform, it still is a side yard. This is a copy of the recorded subdivision plan that created Richard Road, and I've highlighted in yellow the area that you're looking at, that reserved strip. And as you can see, there is no continuation of a roadway designed on that plan, so it's not the subject of an approved subdivision plan. Under our zoning bylaw, let me back up for a second. Under our zoning bylaw, the question I guess you're asking, is this a front yard or a side yard? You know, is it a front yard on a street or is it a side yard? It's a side yard in this instance, it's fact sensitive, because a front yard, a front lot line is defined as a lot line that divides a lot from a street. So then the question becomes, okay, is Walnut Street a street? Yes, it's a front lot line. Is Richard Road a street? Yes, it's on a subdivision plan which I just handed you. Is that strip of land next to us a street? No, because under the definition of street in our bylaw, it says, is it on a definitive subdivision plan that's been approved by the planning commission? A street layout? No. Is it used as a public way or a street? Is it maintained? No. And is it paved and ready, you know, could be used? No. It's none of that, so it's not considered a street. It has not reached that level where anyone has tried to permit it and lay it out as a street. It's just reserved for the future, which developers do that all the time in case they wanted to. Basically, right now, it's almost impossible because of the wetlands laws that are now in place. They don't allow you to extend the road out back there. If you're familiar with the property with the high tension wires and it's a swamp out there, the water comes out on the swamp.
So it's an unbuildable area, is that what you're saying?
I mean, I haven't actually gone out there and walked the entire length, but I know the framers who own that. I mean,
No, I agree with you on that, it's pretty bad.
Okay. Well, it's always good to know, you know, at least we know who owns this piece of property.
Exactly on that other one.
Okay. And that's a good thing, but it is the only access to the land in the back too, so.
Well, there was actually another access point up on the far side of Richard Road, but they actually, the owner used as a driveway and built a house.
Okay. The other ones would suffer though, down the road if that guy decides he wants to use it. You know that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the only.
So you're going in this knowing that.
If this gets built, the garage would be 15 feet off of that layout of a road.
That's.
And of course, the road is not that wide as shown on the plan.
Yeah.
You know, and.
It's not right on top.
Suffer's the right adjective on that one, because I don't think it derogates property values. If there's a garage 15 feet from a roadway, because a house would not go in that.
But I think you would hopefully agree that there's a hardship here in that there is a high tension easement on the left that prevents us, there's wetlands on the right behind us that prevents us from moving it back. This is where the location of the house is, so you want to line it up. And so it doesn't derogate from the driveway bylaw.
And the character, I noticed that everybody has garages, so the character doesn't change, I understand that.
Anybody else? All good? To the floor? No? Okay, closing it to the floor.
I'd like to make a motion. The hearing petition of Caden Realty Trust, 60 Richard Road, Abington, for a 5-foot side yard setback variance under 175-29 special permit, under 175-35 to allow construction of attached garage within the floodplain wetland protection overlay district at 60 Richard Road. Property located on Assessors Plan 10, Plot 6162 in the R30 zone. Be approved because we agree that the hardship here is high tension lines on one side and the odd shape of the lot and where the existing driveway is on the other.
You have a second?
Second.
All approved?
Aye.
Aye. All set.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yep.
And good luck on your.
Good luck.
Have fun.
Have fun, don't go to Florida.
Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
Much better.
Hawaii, excellent. Can you put me in a suitcase? Best of luck.
It being after 7:30 PM, Abington Zoning Board of Appeals. We'll hear the petition of Timothy and Stephanie Reed, 102 Bedford Street LLC, Abington, for a variance under 175-21A8 to convert an existing 2-unit dwelling into a 3-unit dwelling with no exterior changes. The character of the home at 102 Bedford Street, properly located at Assessors Plan 23, Plot 9, in the Highway Commercial Zone.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Sean Riley.
Hi, Sean, how's it going?
Weird.
Yeah.
I'm here representing Stephanie Reed, who's with me tonight. She's one of the principals of 102 Bedford Street LLC, which is owned by Stephanie and her husband Tim. It's currently a 2-family house on Route 18, right near Bank of America, between Block Street and Bank of America. And you're familiar, Mr. Mullen, yeah. Stephanie and Tim bought this house in 2016 with the desire of currently the house, and I know this is all in the application, if I could review. The 3rd floor is a 3-bedroom apartment. The 2nd floor and the 1st floor combined into one apartment with 2 bedrooms on the 2nd level and 1 bedroom on the 1st level. So there's 1 bedroom on the 1st, 2 bedrooms on the 2nd, 3 bedrooms on the 3rd, but they've combined the first 2 floors, so it's one larger apartment. Their proposal was to go in there and break that apartment into separate floors. So they would end up with 1 bedroom on the 1st, a 2nd bedroom, 2nd apartment with 2 bedrooms on the 3rd, the 2nd and the 3rd floor remains the same as 3 bedrooms. So they did all their homework before they bought it. They did the research. They came in and they pulled the records from the assessor's office, and the assessor's office showed that the property is located in the transitional commercial district on Route 18. Also, the zoning map available on the town website shows it's in the transitional commercial district on Route 18. And if I could approach, this is the use map. So the thought was to convert under section A8 of our use chart. In the transitional commercial zone, it's allowed as of right. So they bought the property. And all they needed to do, you'd think, is go get a building permit. But before they did that, they went to the Conservation Commission and got approval because they wanted to improve the parking area, which they're doing. They're required to have 7 parking spaces. They're building aviaries for 9 parking spaces. It's already been approved. We're not into the wetlands again, but because you're within 100 feet of it, they approved it, thought it was a nice upgrade. So that's already been done. Fortunately, when they kind of started looking at getting the financing done, I don't want to say it's misfortune, but they asked me my opinion. They actually have zoning opinions. They have to review the zoning, prove to a bank that everything's all set. And according to the assessor's card, which you have a copy of in the application, it says, and I've circled it in pink, it's in the transitional commercial zone. And on the copy of the zoning map in the town of Abington, it says it's in the transitional commercial zone. But I said, I think it's wrong, and it is wrong. It's not been updated. This is a copy from June 8th of 2015 from town meeting, which I happen to be pretty familiar with the proceedings at town meeting because I'm town moderator. And so I just kind of knew on the top of my head that I remembered we had changed this zone in June of 2015. But the assessor's records, the town website map has not been changed. So the town meeting vote changed it from just that side of Route 18.
It's all your fault.
Not my fault. People haven't voted it. So it was changed from transitional commercial to highway commercial. And if you now refer back to the use chart that I handed you, it says it's not allowed. We need a use variance.
Oh, boy.
So here they are, they own the property, they're all ready to go, they did their due diligence,
Got a good lawyer.
and I think they swore at me first when I told them they had to stop what they were doing.
Oh.
So we have to go to the zoning board, this is where the zoning board can use their powers to correct the wrong. Is there a hardship? I think I just laid it out and described it to you. Certainly not self-created. And resulting, there's not going to be any change to the building itself, exterior. We're not increasing the number of bedrooms. If anything, we can better control the number of tenants because the line of apartments is still too small. And we're improving the property significantly with a nice paved parking area. It already is a paved parking area, but we're just kind of redoing that. So based on all that, I know the hour is late. I hope that the board would agree that a use variance in this circumstance is warranted to allow them to proceed with the interior renovations of this building to maintain the same number of bedrooms that already exist.
My concern had been around parking, having, walked around that block and all. I couldn't imagine, jamming 6 or 7 cars, which is what you would need to, in you know, it's not a small lot now for 2 cars, but, I mean, you're more familiar than I of getting onto Route 18.
And that's why
Loves to back up onto, you know.
there is a copy of the parking plan that was approved by the Conservation in your packet, which shows just that, and that was the presentation we had at the Conservation Commission, that we were required to build to maintain 7 spaces. We basically wanted to enlarge it to get 9, so that we would pretty much erase the chance that someone's going to try to park on Route 18, which is illegal anyhow in the state highway. So, but they thought it was worth the investment to add the extra parking spaces.
Is there any sort of layout, like picture of what the, or is it this? You're
That's the
expecting
plan.
me to read that?
Yeah, what kind of,
Did I blow it up on the next page?
no, not really. It's-
No. I mean, yes, that is the plan. I'm sorry, because we need to show the entire property.
Especially because you've got, I mean, you've got that drainage, that river right next to you.
For those of us who don't have good eyes anymore.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, so
That
that's,
is a blow up.
that's more of what I was
Right.
hoping, where
Yep.
people
Yes.
aren't backing onto Route
Right.
18, because that's,
Thanks.
I
Very
mean,
good.
you hear the crashes as well
Yes.
as I do,
Yeah.
on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and they want to be able to assure their tenants that there's going to be a parking space when they come home. And they've held off on that work until we came to the zoning board.
I don't have any further questions.
Anybody else? Questions?
I just, the only thing the use of, and the amount of every property, but
Well, there's not going to be any increase in water and sewer or bedrooms. I mean, this is a very insignificant change. If anything, it's going to better control the number, as I mentioned, the number of people. Right now, we have 2 3-bedroom apartments. And I think, I don't have to say anything more than that. That just
It's right there.
invites more people.
Right.
I just worry too that how many, we've got a problem then if this happens where it's not updated, and then, because we'd be setting a precedence, I would think, every time someone's going to use this example.
It's an unusual example.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that often, and it is a hardship.
And-
But as long as they can make a 600 square foot unit, and the other 2 at least 400 square feet, and they've got the parking. This is a real.
I understand that.
This is a hardship.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones here, we go,
Yeah.
this is a hardship.
And I'm not denying that, I'm just saying,
And, yeah, should it be updated? Yep.
but we got a problem, this, somehow it's going to be done on a, because it's effective the date of the meeting.
That's correct. And,
Retroactive,
you know,
right.
Right, so that has
Once
to
the
be
Attorney
corrected.
General approves it,
So
right.
somebody in the future is going to come back and say 3 months or 6 months later, it hasn't been updated, and use the same example.
That's a good catch by you.
And,
Well, no, I know when this was done.
And it's not in the
It should be done
paperwork yet.
promptly. And that's something, it's the responsibility of the town to do that.
Okay. All right, anybody else on
We
this?
should address
Well,
that as a board.
I was going to say that this is an excellent example of a use variance. Most towns do not have use variances. Abington is one of very few that have it. And we always go against the idea of a use variance because of what it can lead to. But here's an example, an excellent example of hardship, where you do have to do use variance to make good on what was done.
Yes, I'm glad you said that, because I agree with that wholeheartedly. Towns that don't have use variances have a completely different looking chart. They have a lot more special permits and a lot more yeses, because they want businesses to be able to come in. But as you all know, the special permit's a much lower threshold. Well, there are instances where someone comes and asks you for a use variance, it's a higher threshold. And any one of you, 3 members who are voting, can say no and knock it out. Hopefully you won't do that in this one. So the use variance is not something that is taken for granted, but it is something that will be very valuable. The town of Rockland voted about 3 years ago to take away the use variance. About 2 years later, they took a vote to put it back in because of issues that they had where they had no way to address these type of issues. So thank you for your time. I know it's late.
Anybody else? We're good? Open, Russ? No? Open to the floor? Close the floor? All right. Anybody want to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to approve the petition of Timothy and Stephanie Reed, 102 Bedford Street LLC, Abington, for a variance under 175-21A8 to convert existing 2-unit dwelling into a 3-unit dwelling with no exterior changes to the character of the home, at 102 Bedford Street. The property is located on Assessor's Plan 23, Plot 9, in the Highway Commercial Zone.
Recognizing the hardship
Right.
was basically a clerical error created.
Right,
by the
we should
town.
put that in there
Exactly,
too,
yes.
that it is,
Absolutely, she's got it.
you have that, right, that this was an error
I-
in words.
Not self-created.
Right.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Accepted.
Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Welcome aboard, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I got you next, and I'll be all right.
One more.
Yeah, that's,
Okay, we got one more thing on the agenda, I think.
yep.
1200 Bedford Street.
Is, where's, oh, that's not an official hearing?
Is, I got it right here and that.
Yes.
No, it's discussion.
Discussion?
All right, so it's discussion of violations of 1200 Bedford Street.
Okay. What we got?
Now, I could personally say that they don't own the property, my understanding.
Correct.
So they're leasing it, and when this came in front of the board, I remember we were very adamant that they do not place their trucks there, that they place them back. And the gentleman said, oh yeah, don't worry, they'll be in the back, they will not be in the front. Now, again, every time you go by it, they're there. They only removed them probably 3 weeks ago,
I did drive by and see them there myself.
but they're gone now.
Okay.
One is still there with a blank on it unless it's been removed. The point is, I'm just worried about this continuing. We can technically take that permit away from them. And again, they don't own the property, so we would have to go after the owner.
I think the special permit was granted to
The lady.
daycare, not the
Yeah,
owner.
right.
The owner's McPhail, and Angel is the
Lessing.
lessee, yeah. So I think it was granted to her, to be honest with you. Or the
Well, that's who came in front of the board.
Yeah, I think it was granted to her. And you
And my
can
only
take it
problem is they're kind of defying us. So
Well-
I would put,
I spoke to McPhail because that's his tenant, and on several occasions, and said, hey, tell her to move. And,
Whose truck is it? Do we know?
yeah,
There's-
There's a bunch of
Lessees.
vans and stuff, right?
the people
lessees.
leasing the property that run the daycare, and they're the ones that have the permit to store the open lot storage of the vehicles. And I asked Matt, and I said, would you ask them to move them? You know, they got the permit, they're supposed to be stored behind the building, so we don't have to look at trucks right sitting on 18. And that went ignored. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, and so you guys could be aware. And so if I don't get compliance with Marion and whatnot, fair warning. And you don't want to play by the rules, you're not going to play at all. You know, so you guys, we didn't pull this one time. You do what is asked for, or you revoke the permit, period.
that would be my suggestion.
And that's what I would be suggesting to you guys, which is why it's on the agenda to discuss, because I don't want to deal with it. You're either going to abide by the rules and not give me a hard time about it. You guys were gracious enough to grant the permit for the storage.
With the conditions.
And you're going to do and abide by the conditions, or that'll be the end of it. Because personally, I don't want to be chasing the stuff.
Right.
I've got other things to do. And that's it. And that's all I wanted to say with you guys.
Now, in this case, I mean, do we actually have something written up, or to warn them?
It's on the
or-
agenda and whatnot, and she'll be,
Did they get notice of it?
not that, I'm just telling you guys,
Okay.
she's going to be apprised of the fact that it was discussed, and that'll be it. And, you know, she's, you know, this is kind of putting her on notice now. You know, we had 3 trucks out there, we got 2 moved, I think last time I saw, 1 was still sitting there. If I asked you to move the trucks and put them back there, you know what, I want you to move the trucks. I shouldn't have to be asking. just do what is asked, you know? Stick them in your face right on 18, this is what we didn't want, otherwise you can't have it all. It's the end of it.
Well, is that the only place that the trucks can be put, or they can be placed somewhere else?
They
could
are
make them.
permitted to be put behind the building.
Right.
Not
Yes.
to exceed the distance, so nobody has to see them. That's when we granted that.
That was a
special
condition.
permit, and that was a condition that was given to you.
It's been more than once that you've seen I personally have seen the vehicles there. I drove by and saw the vehicles there. There's more, there was like 3 or 4.
And we'll go back and we can bring this up, maybe somebody on the floor has seen them who lives next door or adjacent to the property.
Vinny,
Bring it to the
Vinny's gonna
floor?
say I live next door.
Stuff here.
Okay.
And Marshall has some other photographs. These are all date stamped. You know, the other photos of
I do not with me.
the son, but those are about 6 months apart.
That's-
It's still, the box truck is still there.
Yep.
One van is moved behind. Well,
See, and this
Oh,
is,
yeah.
not behind
I've seen
the
those
rock.
out there as well. Yeah.
well, we made a condition they don't do it.
Yeah.
Because that's advertising besides.
Problem I have is.
I've seen them myself. They were right out front.
Function there, they start parking all over my other parking lot, over my parking lot next door to them. I don't care, if they ask me, that's fine, but I'm not gonna go over there and then not do it. Because they don't ask. That's enough.
Right. And that's, I'm sorry, you're Mr. Simmons, right?
No,
No.
I'm City Andrew.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. I should know you,
He's
you're
in a butter.
before us on that.
That's right.
Can
But
we
that
enter
was
those?
my concern, was that the box truck doesn't say Sunshine Academy, so I was wondering who
When he
owned
runs a
that.
transportation company out of there to another facility,
Mhm.
okay, which is not allowed to have, well, he's gonna file for a little thing license, to chauffeuring people for our bus license, I think it is.
Right.
Whatever you are, because he's doing transportation for another facility, his, but he's storing the buses there.
Yeah, I mean, this one here does have his
Well, I was
information
looking
on.
at the, right now, last
That
I've
one
seen,
there,
it's just
yeah.
the box truck in front.
It has no plates on it.
Right.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
is also a violation.
Wow, yeah.
And because that was further away, but there's a lot more buses there. There's other photos of it.
Rich, he's approved, he's allowing us to keep those pictures, so we can keep that on file that we, as of this date,
Okay.
we did discuss it, and this is what happened, and we're aware of it.
It can be for Marshall.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's-
Yeah, I'm gonna take it on this stuff.
Okay,
File, Mark.
close it to the floor, and thank you.
I gotta go home and get all my files.
So, what do we suggest to do about this situation here?
We're gonna bring it, up, and we're gonna go back, and we're gonna visit, Angel, and, give a timeline to, move it and leave it back there, and if we see them there and they start doing it again,
Pull the
we're gonna
permit.
come back and petition you guys to yank a
Pull the
license.
Okay, all right.
Do we send them any sort of, or do you send them any notification above
He's
and
going to
We'll
beyond
start
that?
verbally, then
and
we'll
then-
get with, written, and then, that'll be
Okay.
the end of it, and then I'm coming up to see you guys and say, look, I'm not dealing with this anymore.
Okay,
That's the end.
all right.
And we're gonna-
Again, that's like you said, I have personally seen the vehicles there too, so.
Well, can I ask, is it
Amen.
possible to put I don't want to say any longer, but is it possible to put the buildings, the trucks behind the building?
That's where they're supposed to be,
But-
3 of them.
But this is a school right behind there.
Yeah.
Is there a place for the trucks to go?
That's where they're
Yeah.
supposed to be.
There is?
Yeah, and that's where they're supposed to be, and if there isn't a place...
That's what we told them.
There isn't a place there, they have to make a place to put them there, and put them there, or get rid of them, because you can't leave them out front. I'm tired of them.
Well, what harm is it to have the trucks out front?
It's not permitted.
It's advertising.
All right,
Open lot storage.
Yep,
That's what
open
was
lot,
permitted.
always.
all right, that's good. We don't have to make any motion on this or anything, we're just gonna,
Just make note of it.
make
We
note of it.
discussed it.
We discussed it, okay.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting
There
in
we go, I
September.
was gonna ask you that.
Anyone second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting we had, he said that was...
Meeting adjourned.